My dad laughed in my face when I pitched my business idea, then handed all my work to my brother. 7 years later, I'm CEO of a multi-million-dollar company and just bought out their failing business for pennies on the dollar. Dad's crying now. Hey, Reddit. My dad and brother always treated me like the family screw-up. So I walked out, built my own company from nothing, and stopped caring what they thought. Turns out they weren't ready to let it go that easy. But before we get into that mess, let me start from the beginning. So I'm Marcus, 32, and I run a construction development company. Not the kind of business everyone posts about on LinkedIn, but the kind where you actually build shit that matters. My dad, Richard, used to run Monroe Industries, big commercial real estate firm. Had my older brother Derek lined up to take over since we were kids. I was supposed to be the backup plan, the other son who'd handle paperwork or whatever. 3 years ago, I pitched Dad on a mixed-use development idea I'd been working on for months. He laughed in my face, told me to stop dreaming and learn the family business properly. 2 weeks later, he handed my entire project portfolio to Derek and made him VP. I walked out that night and never went back. On Monday at 9:40 a.m., I was at my Newark construction site going over electrical plans with my foreman Tony when I heard a car door slam. Expensive different. I looked up and there was a black Mercedes S-Class parked near the fence. My dad got out from the passenger side, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Then Derek climbed out of the driver's seat, sunglasses on, looking like he just stepped out of a yacht club. They didn't see me at first. I was covered in dust, wearing the same clothes as the rest of my crew. Just another guy on site. Derek walked up to the fence, looking around like he was inspecting a dumpster. Jesus, this neighborhood's a shithole, he said loud enough for half my crew to hear. Why would anyone develop here? Dad was scrolling on his phone. Investment property. Trying to get in before the area gentrifies. Flip it in a few years. One of my guys, probably 22 years old, was carrying lumber past them. Derek pointed at him. Hey, buddy, you know who owns this site? We're looking to talk to someone in charge, not you people. The kid looked confused, glanced at me. I shook my head slightly, told him it was fine. He kept walking. Tony's jaw tightened. He'd worked for me since the beginning, knew the whole family history. Can I help you, gentlemen? He asked, walking toward the fence. Derek didn't even look at him. Yeah, we need to talk to whoever runs this operation. We're interested in the property. You're looking at him, Tony said, jerking his thumb back at me. That's when Derek finally looked. Actually looked. His expression went from confused to shocked to fake friendly in about 2 seconds. Marcus? He pulled his sunglasses down. Holy shit. What are you doing here? I walked over slowly, wiping concrete dust off my hands. Working. You? Dad looked up from his phone now, saw me. His face did this thing where he was trying to figure out if he should be embarrassed or condescending. He landed on condescending. Son, you're working construction now? He said it like I told him I was collecting cans for recycling. I thought you were doing consulting or something. I am doing something, I said. Derek was looking around the site now, seeing the scope of it. 4 buildings, mixed commercial and residential. Probably 200 units total when it was done. Wait, you work for the developer? Not exactly. Tony was trying not to smile. Marcus owns the whole project. Bought the land, designed the development, secured the financing. Dad's scrolling hand froze for half a second, then kept moving. Sure he does. His tone made it clear he thought Tony was either lying or mistaken. Derek laughed. Yeah, okay. Our little brother's a real estate mogul now. Good one. I'm serious. We get it. Dad cut him off. You're loyal to your boss. Appreciate that. He said it the way you'd talk to a kid telling you his dad works for Nintendo. I handed the blueprints to Tony. I've got a flight to catch in a couple hours. Tony, make sure the inspector gets these revised plans. You got it, boss. Where are you going? Seattle. National Industry Summit. I drove off and in my rearview mirror, they were just standing there next to their Mercedes, looking lost. My phone buzzed. Text from my business partner, Jake. Jet's fueled. See you at the airport. Yeah, this was going to be fun. I got to Newark Liberty around 1 p.m. Commercial flights to Seattle were boarding all afternoon. 6-hour slogs with connections in Denver or Chicago. That wasn't my problem, though. I was standing near gate B7 with my duffel bag, the same one I'd had since college. Black, worn at the corners, still worked fine. I was wearing jeans and a regular button-down, nothing fancy. Around me, it was the usual airport chaos. Families dragging kids, business people typing on laptops, that one guy yelling into his phone about quarterly reports. Then I heard it. That laugh. Derek's laugh. The one he did when he thought he was being funny in front of people. I turned and sure enough, there they were. Dad, Derek, and some blonde woman I didn't recognize at first. She was dressed business professional, carrying a leather portfolio with the Monroe Industries logo embossed on it. They had matching designer luggage, the kind with the fancy hard shell and built-in phone chargers. The blonde woman clicked over in heels, and that's when I recognized her. Ashley, my ex from 7 years ago, the one who dumped me 2 months after I left the family company. Last I'd heard through the industry grapevine, she'd joined Monroe Industries' marketing department about 6 months after we broke up. Guess she'd worked her way up. The portfolio and the summit attendance meant she was somebody's senior director now. They saw me and Derek's face lit up like Christmas morning. Well, 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 he said, walking over. Told you, Dad. Same flight. Dad looked at my duffel bag, then at their designer luggage. Marcus, didn't expect to run into you here. Said I had a flight to catch. Ashley was standing there awkward, trying to figure out if she should acknowledge that we used to date or pretend we were strangers. She went with a weak smile and a small wave. So, you're really going to the summit? Derek asked. What airline you on? We're on United, first class. Private charter. The words just sat there for a second. Derek's smile froze. Ashley blinked. Dad's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed like he was trying to figure out if I was joking. Private charter, Derek repeated slowly. Like, you booked a seat on one of those shared jet things? Those net jets or whatever? No. Then what do you mean private charter? The loudspeaker announced boarding for first-class passengers on their flight. Dad picked up his bag. That's us. Marcus, I don't know what game you're playing, but lying about... I'm not lying. Private charters cost 20 grand minimum, Dad said. You expect me to believe? My phone buzzed. Text from Jake. Where you at? Captain's asking. I texted back. 2 minutes. Derek was watching me. Who's that? Your Uber driver? Another buzz. Different number. Mr. Hayes, we're ready when you are. Car's out front. About 30 seconds later, a guy in a proper pilot's uniform walked up. Not airport staff. Actual flight crew. He had captain's bars on his shoulders, and he was carrying a tablet. Mr. Hayes? Yeah. Captain Stevens. We've completed pre-flight. Weather's perfect. Flight plans filed. Whenever you're ready, we can head out. The area around us went quiet. A businessman with a coffee cup stopped mid-sip. The woman at the gate counter looked over. Dad was staring. Derek's mouth was slightly open. Ashley had her phone out like she was about to record something, but she was just frozen. I picked up my duffel. Let's go. Perfect. The car's right outside. We'll have you wheels up in 15 minutes. Your business partner's already aboard. We started walking toward the exit. Not toward the gates, toward the private terminal exit. Captain Stevens was talking about flight time and weather patterns, but I was barely listening. I glanced back once. Dad was standing there with his boarding pass in his hand. Other passengers walking around him to get to the gate. Derek was next to him, bags at his feet, just staring. Ashley had lowered her phone. The automatic doors opened and there was a black SUV waiting. Captain Stevens opened the door for me. After you, sir. I climbed in. Through the tinted window, I could see them still standing there, watching. Then the door closed and we pulled away toward the private terminal on the other side of the airport. My phone started buzzing. Text from Derek. What the hell was that? Another one. You actually own a plane? I put the phone face down and looked out at the runway. Jake was already on the jet when I boarded. They were at the airport, I said. He grinned. Please tell me they saw the captain. Front row seats to the whole thing. The engine started up. Jake pulled up his tablet as we taxied. So the Dubai contract officially cleared this morning. 200 million 3-year build timeline. They wired the first deposit. Hit our account around 9 a.m. Robert confirmed the inspection schedules? Yeah, he sent the revised timeline. We're good on all 4 sites. Newark's ahead of schedule, actually. Should be done by March instead of May. Robert Ross. That's the guy Dad fired 7 years ago, the one who gave me my first real contract. Now he's my VP of operations, and probably the main reason this company actually works. Jake's scrolling through more emails. Your dad's company made the news again. They went public 18 months ago to raise capital. Stocks down 28% from the IPO price. Dropped another 6% yesterday. What happened? That casino project in Atlantic City. Apparently Derek's team screwed up the permitting and now the whole thing's delayed by 8 months. Investors are pissed. I remember that project. I designed the initial proposal 2 months before Dad pushed me out. Had all the permitting research done. Environmental impact studies. Everything lined up. Then they handed it to Derek and he just ignored half of it. Thought he could skip steps because of the family name. How bad is it? Jake pulled up a financial report. They're bleeding money. Monroe Industries used to employ over 400 people. They're down to about 120 now. That Atlantic City thing was supposed to bring in 40 million. Now it's just a sinkhole eating their reserves. They gonna fold? They're already technically insolvent. Debt load of 87 million against book value of maybe 60 million. Banks won't touch them. I give them 12 months before forced bankruptcy. The plane lifts off. That feeling in your stomach as the ground drops away. Through the window, I can see Newark getting smaller, the highways turning into little gray lines. We talked business for the rest of the flight. Dubai timelines, Newark inspections, the usual logistics. Jake pulled up my keynote speech, and we went over the main points. Jake opens his laptop again. Speaking of, we should go over your speech for tonight. Your opening keynote. The whole industry's going to be watching. What time do we land? 3:15. Event starts at 6, but the VIP reception's at 5. We're the platinum sponsor, so you'll need to do the press thing first. I look out the window. Just clouds now. Solid white below us. Dad and Derek are going to be there, I say. I know. They don't know Hayes Industrial is the sponsor. Jake grins. Yeah, that's going to be fun to watch. My phone buzzes again. Another text from Derek. Seriously, dude, call me. I turn the phone off and put it in my bag. We landed at 3:18. By 3:30, we were in Manhattan. Jake checked us into the hotel while I headed straight for the venue 4 blocks away. The venue was 4 blocks away, connected to a convention center. I walked over in my jeans and button-down, still carrying my duffel. Security at the entrance checked my ID against a list, saw my name, and suddenly their whole attitude changed. Mr. Hayes, welcome. You need anything at all, just let us know. Inside it was organized chaos. Staff setting up chairs, testing microphones, rolling out carpets with sponsor logos. And there it was, 20 feet tall on the main stage backdrop, Hayes Industrial Solutions, in clean white letters against navy blue. A woman in a headset spotted me. Mr. Hayes? I'm Jennifer, event coordinator. We've been expecting you. Everything on schedule? Yes, sir. And thank you again for stepping in last minute when Baxter Development pulled their sponsorship. 3 weeks doesn't give us much time normally, but your team made it seamless. I nodded. When exactly did Baxter pull out? Late September. We kept it quiet. Just swapped the branding and updated the website. Most attendees who registered back in July or August have no idea there was a sponsor change. That explained it. Dad would have registered months ago when Baxter was still listed as the platinum sponsor. Your keynote's at 6:45, right after the opening remarks. We've got your mic check scheduled for 5:30, and the VIP reception starts at 5 in the North Hall. The morning panel, she checked her tablet. Panel 3, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Ethics in Modern Development. Your VP, Robert Ross, is confirmed as a panelist. Good. Can I see the stage? She walked me through the main hall. Probably seats for 800 people, all facing a raised platform with podiums and screens. My company logo was everywhere. On the programs, the lanyards, the banners hanging from the ceiling. We've also got your press availability at 4:45, Jennifer said. Just a quick 5-minute thing. Couple of industry publications want quotes for their coverage. I checked my watch. 4:10. I'll be back at 4:30. Need to change first. I texted Robert on my way back to the hotel. Panel tomorrow. Tell the story if it comes up. His reply came back instantly. Your dad's gonna be there. I know. 3 dots then. All right. I'm in. I changed into my suit. Charcoal gray, simple. 7 years ago, I was sleeping in a truck. My phone had 12 texts from Derek, 6 from Dad. Ignored them all. Press interview at 4:40. Standard questions until one reporter asked, "Did your father inspire your approach to business?" He taught me what kind of leader I didn't want to be. Her eyebrows went up, but she didn't push it. By 5:15, I was in the VIP reception area. It was a smaller hall connected to the main venue, maybe 100 people networking over appetizers and drinks. Industry veterans, CEOs, investors, the kind of people who made decisions that moved millions of dollars. Jake found me near the entrance. You see them yet? Who? Your family. They checked in 20 minutes ago. Dad's over by the bar talking to someone from Baxter Development. I scanned the room and spotted him, still in his suit from the airport, looking polished and professional like always. Derek was next to him, laughing at something, Ashley on his arm in a cocktail dress. They hadn't seen me yet. Too busy working the room, handing out business cards, doing the networking dance. Let them have their moment, I said. They'll figure it out soon enough. I woke up at 6:30 a.m. to text from Jake. Panel starts at 10. Robert's nervous. Also, your dad tried to corner me at breakfast. I got dressed and headed downstairs. The hotel restaurant was packed with summit attendees, Everyone in business casual eating overpriced eggs. I grabbed coffee and a bagel, found a table in the corner. Jake showed up 5 minutes later. What did Dad want? I asked. Kept asking questions about Hayes Industrial. Who we work with, what our revenue is, if we're hiring. I played dumb, said I just handle paperwork. He knows you're my partner. Yeah, but he's pretending he doesn't. Probably hoping to get information without directly asking you. We finished eating and walked over to the convention center. The main hall was already filling up, people finding seats, checking schedules on their phones. The morning panels were in smaller breakout rooms off to the side. Panel 3 was in conference room B. Maybe 200 seats, half full when we got there. Robert was already on stage with 3 other panelists, testing his microphone. He saw me, gave a small nod. I sat in the back row. Jake sat next to me. More people filtered in over the next 10 minutes. Then I saw Dad and Derek walk in, Ashley between them. They sat about 6 rows from the front, right side. Dad had a notebook out like he was planning to take notes. The moderator stepped up at exactly 10 a.m. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our panel on ethics in modern development. We've got 4 industry leaders here to discuss contractor relations, sustainable practices, and accountability in our field. She introduced each panelist. When she got to Robert, she read his title. Robert Ross, VP of Operations at Hayes Industrial Solutions. I watched Dad's reaction. His head tilted slightly, like he was trying to remember where he'd heard that name. Derek was scrolling on his phone, not paying attention. The first 20 minutes were standard panel stuff, questions about environmental impact, worker safety, community engagement. Robert gave solid answers, professional and detailed. The other panelists were good too, but you could tell Robert actually knew what he was talking about from experience, not just theory. Then, the moderator asked, Robert, you've been in this industry for 3 decades. Has the culture around ethics changed during that time? Robert adjusted his microphone. Yes and no. The regulations have improved. There's more oversight, but the fundamental challenge is still the same. Standing up for what's right when it costs you something. Can you give an example? He paused, glanced at me in the back row. I nodded once. Sure. About 7 years ago, I was working for a large commercial development firm. Won't name names, but it was a well-established company. We were bidding on a major project, and I noticed some of the environmental impact assessments were incomplete. Not wrong exactly, just missing key data that would have slowed us down. The room went quiet. People were actually listening. I brought it up to leadership, said we needed to redo the assessments properly before submitting the bid. I was told to mind my own business and focus on my job. So I went over their heads, contacted the regulatory board directly. Figured someone had to. What happened? The moderator asked. I was fired the next day, escorted out by security, blacklisted in the industry. Couldn't get hired anywhere for 6 months. Most people assumed I'd done something wrong, because why else would a reputable company let me go, right? Dad was sitting perfectly still now. Derek had put his phone down. Then I got a call from an old colleague, Linda Miller. She'd left Monroe to teach. Said one of her former students had just started a development company and was looking for experienced people. 29 years old, working out of his truck basically. Didn't care about my reputation, just wanted to know if I could do the work. The moderator leaned forward. And that was? Robert smiled slightly. Marcus Hayes, 7 years ago. Now I'm VP of Operations for a company doing $200 million in contracts annually, and I've never once been asked to compromise my standards. The room erupted in applause. People were nodding, some were writing notes. Dad's face had gone pale. Derek was staring at the stage. The moderator was smiling. That's a powerful story, Robert, and it brings up an important point about leadership and culture. The panel continued for another 20 minutes, but nobody was really focusing anymore. Robert's story was what everyone was going to remember. When it ended, people swarmed Robert with questions and business cards. I slipped out the side exit before Dad could spot me. Jake followed. That was perfect, he said. Did you see your dad's face? Yeah. Twitter's already going crazy. Someone live-streamed the panel and people are piecing together that Robert was talking about Monroe Industries. We headed back to the main hall. It was 11:30, still 5 hours before my keynote. I spent the afternoon in meetings with investors, shaking hands, talking about upcoming projects. Every conversation, I could feel eyes on me. People knew who I was now. Not Richard Monroe's son. Marcus Hayes, CEO. At 5 p.m., Jake found me. You ready? As I'll ever be. They're calling your name at 6:45. Full house, standing room only apparently. We walked backstage. I could hear the crowd through the curtains, that low rumble of 800 people talking. Jennifer came over with a microphone pack. Mr. Hayes, you're on right after the opening remarks. 5 minutes. I clipped the mic to my collar. My hands weren't shaking. I was calm, focused. This was what I'd been building toward for 3 years. The announcer walked on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our platinum sponsor and keynote speaker, Marcus Hayes, CEO of Hayes Industrial Solutions. The curtain opened. Stage lights hit my face. I walked out and the applause was deafening. Front row, center seats, Dad, Derek, and Ashley. All three of them staring up at me with expressions I'd remember for the rest of my life. I stepped up to the podium and smiled. The applause died down and I stood there for a second, letting the silence settle. 800 people waiting to hear what I had to say. I could see Dad in the front row, his jaw tight, hands gripping the armrests of his chair. 7 years ago, I pitched a business idea to someone I respected, I started. Spent months on the proposal. Had all the research done. Feasibility studies. Financial projections. I thought it was solid. He laughed at me. Told me I was living in a fantasy and needed to grow up. A few people in the audience shifted in their seats. 2 weeks later, that same person handed my entire portfolio to someone else and took credit for my work. So I left, packed my truck, took $4,000 from my savings account, and started over with nothing. I looked directly at Dad. He wasn't moving. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because that moment taught me something important. Belief is more valuable than pedigree. The people who bet on you when you have nothing are worth more than the ones who only show up when you're successful. More applause. Scattered but genuine. Hayes Industrial started with one contract, $38,000. A man gave me that opportunity, not because of my resume or my connections, but because he trusted my work ethic. That man is Robert Ross, my VP of Operations, and he's the reason this company exists. I spent the next 15 minutes talking about sustainable development practices, ethical contractor relationships, and how to build a company culture that actually values integrity over profit margins. When I finished, the crowd stood up. Not everyone, but enough that it felt real. I walked off stage and Jennifer met me backstage. That was incredible, Mr. Hayes. Press wants a follow-up interview if you have time. Maybe later. I need some air first. The VIP networking area was packed when I got there. People congratulating me, asking for business cards, trying to set up meetings. I nodded and smiled, but I was scanning the room for Dad. He found me first. Marcus. His voice came from behind me. We need to talk. I turned. He looked older than he did this morning, tired around the eyes. Derek was next to him, trying to look casual but failing. Impressive speech, Dad said. I had no idea you'd grown the business this much. You never asked. Fair enough. He glanced around at the crowd, lowered his voice. Look, I know things ended badly between us, but maybe it's time we put that behind us. There could be opportunities for us to work together. Monroe Industries has connections you could use, and your company has the kind of momentum we need right now. I almost laughed. Work together? Dad, you can't afford my consulting rates. His expression hardened. I'm still your father, Marcus. Yeah, and I'm still the son you bet against. I kept my voice level, calm. The one you told wasn't cut out for the real world. Derek stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker. Come on, man. That's ancient history. We're family. We should be celebrating this together, building something bigger than both our companies. Family, I repeated. You mean the brother who's been running the company Dad handed you into the ground? How's that Atlantic City project going, by the way? Derek's face flushed. That's not... We had permitting issues that were outside our control. I did the initial permit research for that project, had everything lined up. Then you took it over and skipped half the regulatory steps because you thought the Monroe name would get you through. Now you're 8 months behind and bleeding investor money. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I designed that proposal. Someone tapped my shoulder. I turned and Ashley was standing there, that same uncomfortable smile from the airport. Hey, Marcus, she said quietly. Can we talk for a second? Privately? Derek's eyes went wide. Babe, what are you doing? I just want to talk to him. Is that okay? I looked at her, then at Derek. We don't have anything to talk about, Ashley. Please, just 2 minutes. We stepped away from Dad and Derek, over to a quieter corner near the windows. She was nervous, playing with her engagement ring. I made a mistake, she said quietly. When we broke up, I should have believed in you. You're engaged to my brother Ashley. Little late for regrets. I know, We're done here. I walked away before she could finish. Did you just hit on my fiancé? He said it loud enough that people nearby turned to look. No. She wanted to talk. I told her there was nothing to say. Bullshit. You've been rubbing this whole success thing in our faces all day, and now you're trying to take my girl too? Derek, you're drunk. I'm not drunk, I'm pissed off. You think you're better than us now? You got lucky with some investors and now you act like you built an empire. Ashley grabbed his arm. Derek, stop. Let's just go. He shook her off. No, I'm tired of this. He walks away from the family, refuses Dad's help, and then shows up here acting like some self-made hero. It's bullshit. Dad tried to intervene. Derek, not here. Why not here? Everyone already knows. Robert told the whole story this morning. Might as well finish it. I stayed calm. You want to finish it? Fine. You got handed everything I built. Every client relationship. Every project proposal. Every system I created. And you ran it into the ground because you thought the work didn't matter. Just the name on the door. That's not true. Your stock's down 18% in 6 months. You've lost 3 major contracts. Investors are pulling out. But sure, keep telling yourself you're doing great. Derek's face went red. You're such a smug asshole. Smug. And you're a trust fund kid who never had to earn anything. I looked at Dad. Both of you are. Dad's voice was quiet. Marcus, please, let's not do this here. Do what? Tell the truth? You wanted me to learn the family business, Dad. Well, I did. I learned that people like you only value results when they come from people you've already decided matter. Everyone else is invisible. I started to walk away. Dad called after me, but I didn't turn around. Derek said something else, but I was already pushing through the crowd toward the exit. Jake caught up with me in the hallway. That looked intense. They tried to pitch working together. Like nothing happened. What did you say? That they can't afford me. He grinned. Cold. It's true. I checked my watch. 7:45. I need to get out of here. Too many people. Outside the air was cold. Traffic noise everywhere. I just stood there for a second. You all right? Jake asked. Yeah, just thought it'd feel different. Winning? I nodded. I don't feel anything. They're just strangers now. Jake grinned. That's the real win, man. I woke up the next morning to my lawyer calling at 7:15 a.m. It's done, Michelle said. Bankruptcy court approved the restructuring plan. You officially control 67% of Monroe Industries as of midnight last night. I sat up in bed. Any issues? None. The creditors were so desperate to recover anything that nobody contested it. Richard tried to file an objection yesterday, but his own lawyers told him it was pointless. We've scheduled an emergency board meeting for 10 a.m. to make the transition official. I'll be there. Jake and I met Michelle outside Monroe Industries at 9:45. She handed me a folder. They're already inside. CFO, 2 board members, and your family. They think this is a standard refinancing meeting. Let's get it over with. I opened the door. Dad was sitting at the head of the table like he still owned the place. Derek was next to him, scrolling his phone. The CFO, a guy named Patterson, looked up when we walked in. Marcus? Dad stood up. What are you doing here? Sit down, Dad. Excuse me? Michelle walked to the front of the room and connected her laptop to the projector. A slide appeared on the wall. Monroe Industries Restructuring. Hayes Capital Group. Dad stared at the screen. What is this? We're not restructuring. We're here to discuss debt refinancing options. No, Michelle said calmly. You're here because Monroe Industries filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection 72 hours ago, and Hayes Capital Group, as the primary creditor, has taken control of the restructuring process. The room went silent. Derek looked up from his phone. Wait, what? We didn't file for bankruptcy. Your CFO did, Michelle said, nodding at Patterson. At the recommendation of your legal counsel. You were 3 days from default on your credit facilities. It was either controlled bankruptcy or complete liquidation. Patterson looked miserable. Richard, I tried to tell you last week, we were out of options. Michelle clicked to the next slide, showing the breakdown of debt acquisitions. For the past 18 months, Hayes Capital Group has been systematically purchasing Monroe Industries debt from various creditors at significant discounts. We bought your commercial real estate loans in March of last year, your vendor payment notes in July, your remaining credit facilities in November. 18 months? Dad's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Every time you tried to refinance, Hayes Capital was there, buying the old debt and refusing to renegotiate terms. We forced you into increasingly unfavorable positions until your debt load became unsustainable. She clicked again. Total investment, $14 million for debt instruments with a face value of $87 million. The creditors were happy to get 20 cents on the dollar. Derek was standing now. You can't do that. That's predatory. It's completely legal, Michelle said. Distressed debt acquisition is a standard investment strategy. Hayes Capital is registered in Delaware, operated through a New York office with no public connection to Hayes Industrial Solutions or Marcus Hayes personally until now. Dad was staring at me. Hayes Capital. I've been getting letters from them for over a year. Every restructuring meeting, every refinancing attempt. That was you? I nodded. Every single one. Derek stood up. This is insane. You can't just buy someone's company without them knowing. Actually, we can, Michelle said. All transactions were legal and properly documented. The debt was sold willingly by the creditors. Patterson, the CFO, was reading through the documents Michelle handed out. This is all legitimate. Jesus, Richard, how did you not see this coming? Dad wasn't looking at the papers. He was looking at me. Why? Because you built this company on my mother's life insurance money and then ran it into the ground trying to make Derek into something he's not. That's not. The Atlantic City project alone lost you $15 million. The casino deal in Connecticut, another $8 million. You've blown through almost every reserve account trying to cover Derek's mistakes. Derek's face went red. Those weren't mistakes. Those were calculated risks. Calculated? I pulled out my own folder, slid it across the table. You skipped environmental assessments, ignored permitting requirements, and used subcontractors with safety violations. That's not risk, that's negligence. Dad picked up the folder, started reading. His hands were shaking slightly. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You've got 60 days to transition out. There's a severance package on the table, pretty generous considering the circumstances. I'm keeping Patterson and most of the operations team. Derek, you're terminated effective immediately. Derek jumped up. You can't fire me. I control 67% of the restructured company through the debt conversion. I can do whatever I want. Dad, say something. But Dad was just sitting there, staring at the numbers in the folder. All the failed projects, all the money lost, all the employees who'd left because of mismanagement. What about the Monroe name? He finally asked. I'm keeping it temporarily for client continuity. Rebrand happens in 6 months. The name Monroe doesn't mean what it used to. So that's it? You're just taking everything? I stood up. No, I'm taking what you destroyed. Monroe Industries had 400 employees 7 years ago. You bled it down to 120 through incompetence and nepotism. The ones who are left deserve leadership that won't drive them into the ground? Dad's voice cracked. This company is my legacy. Your legacy walked out 7 years ago when you chose Derek over doing the right thing. What's left is just a name on a building. Michelle started passing out more documents. Everyone here will receive detailed transition plans. Employees will be notified this afternoon. Mr. Monroe, your office needs to be cleared by November 1st. I headed for the door. Jake followed. Behind us, I could hear Derek starting to argue with Michelle, demanding lawyers, threatening lawsuits that would go nowhere. We took the elevator down to the lobby. My phone was already blowing up with texts. Robert had heard somehow, sent a message. Did you actually buy Monroe? I texted back. Yeah. Tell the team we're expanding operations. Lot of new employees coming on board. Outside it was raining. That cold October rain that makes everything look gray. Jake and I stood under the building awning watching taxis go by. How do you feel? He asked. Tired. That's it? I thought about Dad sitting in that conference room, reading through the evidence of his own failure. Thought about Derek realizing everything he'd been handed was gone. Thought about walking out of that building 3 years ago with nothing. Yeah, I said. That's it. My phone rang. Dad calling. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, Derek called. Voicemail again. Then Ashley, which was weird. Voicemail. You gonna listen to those? Jake asked. Eventually. A town car pulled up. Our driver from earlier. Where to, Mr. Hayes? Airport. We're done here. 40 minutes later, we were back at Teterboro. Captain Stevens had the jet ready. Jake settled in with his laptop. What's first when we land? Newark site. 3rd building. The plane taxied and Manhattan disappeared behind us. My phone buzzed one more time. Text from Dad. Can we please talk about this? I typed back. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choices. I made mine. Deleted it. Typed instead. Take care of yourself, Dad. Hit send. Put the phone on airplane mode. Jake looked over. That it? That's it. The jet lifted off and I closed my eyes, felt the engines pushing us up through the clouds. When I opened them again, we were above everything. Just open sky in all directions. Somewhere below, Dad was probably packing his office. Derek was probably calling lawyers. Ashley was probably regretting every choice she'd made in the last 4 years. But up here, none of that mattered. I pulled out my laptop and opened the file for the next development project. Dubai was done, Newark was ahead of schedule, and we had 3 more proposals waiting for review. The work never stopped. That was the whole point. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. After my wife, my son, and I got in a serious accident, I texted the family chat, "We're in the hospital. My wife is in the ICU." Nobody said anything. Then my sister replied, "I hope she dies. She's always been such a witch to me." So I made sure they regretted it. Sup Reddit. This one's heavy, so settle in. Still not sure how I made it out the other side. Name's Paul, 36 male. Before we get into it, let me give you a quick background. I grew up in Kansas City, worked my way through trade school, and landed a job as a logistics coordinator for a freight company. I met Darcy at a Chiefs tailgate about 11 years ago. She spilled her drink on my jacket, apologized way too many times, and then spent the next 3 hours making fun of my fantasy football picks. Married her a year later. Our son Cole came along 2 years after that. 7 years old now, obsessed with Marvel, and absolutely convinced he could beat me at arm wrestling if I wasn't cheating. Which I was. Every time. Life was good. We had a house in Gladstone, 3 bedrooms, and a garage. Darcy worked as a dental hygienist. Cole was in 2nd grade. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. We'd found our rhythm. Then my family screwed it all up. See, here's the thing about being the responsible one in a dysfunctional family. You don't get a trophy for it. You get a target on your back. My parents, Warren and Grace, had spent the last decade treating me like their personal emergency fund. My sister Haley, 3 years younger and somehow infinitely more entitled, had been riding that same wave since she figured out I'd bail her out every time. 3 years ago, when my dad's back surgery left him unable to work, and my mom's spending habits didn't slow down, I started covering their mortgage. Temporarily, they said, just until things stabilized. But things never stabilize when you're dealing with people who think the word budget is a personal attack. So I kept paying. And when the bank started threatening foreclosure because they'd missed 3 payments before I got involved, I did something stupid. I refinanced the whole thing into my name. Took over the mortgage entirely. My parents signed a quitclaim deed transferring ownership to me because their credit was destroyed and it was the only way to save the house. They were supposed to pay me rent. They never did. Not once. But I let them stay anyway. Because family, right? That decision would come back to bite me. The best part? While I was covering their mortgage, Haley always had money for spa weekends. My mom posted vacation photos 3 times that year. My dad bought a new riding mower. But rent money for me? Never happened. They just kept saying next month until next month stopped meaning anything. But on that Sunday afternoon in October, I wasn't thinking about mortgages or deeds or my parasitic relatives. I was thinking about the pumpkin patch. Cole had been begging to go for weeks. One of his classmates had posted pictures, and suddenly it was all he could talk about. Darcy and I figured we'd make a day of it. Drive out to the farm, let him pick a pumpkin, grab some cider, maybe hit up a corn maze if we had the energy. Simple family stuff. Cole was in the back seat, already debating which pumpkin shape was superior, round or tall. Darcy was scrolling through her phone, looking up the farm's hours. I was driving, half listening to both of them, enjoying the lazy Sunday. We never made it to the pumpkin patch. The intersection was 4 blocks from our house. The light turned green. I pulled forward, and then everything went sideways. The SUV came from the left, ran the red doing at least 50. I saw it for maybe a fraction of a second before impact. Metal screaming, glass shattering, the truck spinning sideways like we were nothing. I heard Darcy scream, heard Cole go silent, and then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, smoke was pouring through the cracked windshield. My door was crushed inward, pinning my left leg. The airbag had deployed and deflated, leaving this chemical smell that burned my throat. I turned my head and saw Darcy slumped against her door, blood running down the side of her face. She wasn't moving. Cole was in the back seat, eyes open, staring at nothing. He wasn't crying, wasn't screaming, just frozen. I tried to reach for Darcy. Couldn't. My leg was pinned and something in my chest felt wrong. Broken ribs, probably. I kept calling her name. She didn't answer. The guy who hit us stumbled out of his SUV. I could see him through what was left of my window. He was swaying like he was on a boat in rough water. He looked at the wreck he'd caused, at the smoking metal and shattered glass, and mumbled something I couldn't hear. Then he actually started walking away. Just turned around and headed for the sidewalk like he could disappear into the crowd and pretend none of this happened. A guy from the house on the corner sprinted across the lawn and tackled him. Full linebacker hit. Pinned him to the grass and held him there while someone else called 911. The driver was yelling something about lawsuits and lawyers and how this wasn't his fault. Even from inside my crumpled truck, I could hear the slur in his voice. Found out later the cops said he failed every field test they gave him. Sirens started screaming in the distance. Felt like hours before they arrived. The EMTs had to cut me out of the truck with the jaws of life. I remember the sound, this high-pitched whining of metal being pried apart. The whole time, I was craning my neck to watch them work on Darcy. They moved fast. They put her on a backboard, started an IV. Someone said something about internal bleeding and possible head trauma. I tried to get to her, tried to push past the EMT working on my leg. He pushed me back down. "Sir, I need you to stay still. That's my wife. I know. They've got her. But I need you here. With me. Staying still. You've got a kid in that ambulance who needs his dad conscious. You hear me?" They took Cole in a separate ambulance. He still hadn't said a word. I don't remember much about the ride to the hospital. Just flashing lights and radio chatter, and this sick feeling that everything was falling apart, and I couldn't do a thing about it. At the ER, they separated us. Me in one room, Cole in another. Darcy rushed to surgery. The doctor told me she had a ruptured spleen and possible brain swelling. They needed to operate immediately. The next few hours would be critical. I sat in that hospital bed with bruised ribs and a sprained knee, watching the clock on the wall tick forward, and felt completely useless. A nurse brought Cole in to see me around hour 3. He still wasn't talking. Just sat in the chair next to my bed, holding a stuffed dinosaur someone had given him, staring at the floor. The child psychologist said it was acute stress response. His brain was protecting itself from trauma. It might take hours or days for him to come back. Somewhere around 4 p.m., while my wife was in surgery and my son sat next to me like a ghost, I picked up my phone and typed a message to the family group chat. "We're in the hospital. Bad accident. Darcy's in surgery. Cole's in shock. I'll update when I know more. Sent. Delivered. Read by 4 people within 10 minutes. Silence. Not a single reply. I didn't expect them to drop everything. I really didn't. But I expected something. A text saying, "Hope she's okay." A call asking what hospital. Even a stupid heart emoji would have been better than nothing. But the chat stayed dead. At first, I figured maybe they were busy. Then I remembered what day it was. My niece Ruby was having her birthday party. Haley had been posting about it for weeks. Made sure everyone knew how much effort she was putting in, how expensive the cake was, how she'd hired a real Disney princess lookalike. I'd been invited, obviously, but we already had the pumpkin patch planned. And honestly, I wasn't in the mood to spend 3 hours watching my sister bask in attention, while her husband Todd stood around looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. I'd dropped off a gift earlier that week, some doll Ruby had been asking for. Figured that was enough. The surgery took 6 hours. 6 hours of sitting in that room, watching Cole slowly come back to himself, waiting for someone in scrubs to walk through the door with news. Every time footsteps approached, my heart rate spiked. During hour 4, a nurse came in to check on Cole. She asked if there was anyone she could call for me. Family, friends, anyone. I showed her my phone, the family chat, my message sitting there. She said some people aren't worth waiting for. During hour 4, I opened Instagram. There they were. My parents, my sister, my nieces, all smiling around a table covered in pink frosting and glitter. My dad wearing a plastic tiara like some kind of joke king. My mom holding up a slice of cake, posing for the camera with that fake smile she always used for photos. Haley hugging the princess lookalike like they were old friends. Everyone tagged. Everyone posting stories. Everyone clearly, obviously, undeniably on their phones. I scrolled through the stories. Watched my dad do some stupid dance that got a bunch of laugh reactions. Watched my mom raise a glass for the camera. Watched Haley post a selfie with the caption, "Best mom ever," and 100 heart emojis. They had seen my message. Every single one of them. In the comment section. People congratulating Haley on the party. My mom replying with heart emojis to every single one. My dad tagging himself in photos. Active. All while my message sat there in the group chat. Read. Ignored. And they picked a birthday party over their own flesh and blood. I put the phone down and didn't pick it up again for hours. The surgeon finally came in around 10 p.m. Darcy had made it through. The spleen was gone, but they'd stopped the bleeding. The brain swelling was minor, responding well to treatment. She was in the ICU, sedated, stable but critical. The next 48 hours would tell us more. I asked if I could see her. They said not yet, maybe tomorrow. Cole fell asleep in the chair next to me, still holding that stuffed dinosaur. I watched him breathe and tried not to think about how close we'd come to losing everything. The next morning, my buddy Vince showed up. Vince and I had worked together for almost a decade. Big guy, former offensive lineman at Mizzou. He'd heard about the accident and driven straight to the hospital. He walked into my room carrying a bag of breakfast burritos. "You look like garbage," he said, setting the bag down. "Thanks. Feel worse." "Your family show up yet?" I just shook my head. He stared at me for a second. Then, quieter. "Not one of them?" "Read the message. All four of them. Nothing." Vince didn't say anything else. Just pulled up a chair and started unpacking the burritos. He stayed for 3 hours. Helped me walk Cole down to the cafeteria. Sat with him while I finally got to see Darcy in the ICU. She was hooked up to machines, tubes everywhere, face pale and bruised. But she was breathing. Her heart was beating. She was alive. I held her hand and told her I was there. I don't know if she heard me. On day 3, my dad finally called. I was in Darcy's room when my phone buzzed. Saw his name. Felt my jaw tighten. I stepped into the hallway and answered. "Finally," he said. "Been trying to reach you. I've been at the hospital. With my wife. Who's in the ICU?" Silence. Then, "Right. How's that going?" That was it. That was his version of concern. Like I was updating him on a home renovation. "She almost died, Dad." But she didn't. "Look, the mortgage payment is due Friday and we're short. Your mother needs her prescriptions. And Haley's got..." "Are you serious right now?" "What?" "You always help. It's what you do." I hung up without saying another word. That night, after Cole had finally fallen asleep in the cot they'd set up for him, I sat in the dark and made a decision. I was done. They wanted to treat me like I didn't matter? Fine. They were about to learn what life without me actually looked like. Darcy woke up on day 5. Groggy, confused, but awake. The doctors said her recovery would take months, but the worst was behind her. Cole started talking again that same afternoon. I was sitting next to his bed when he looked up at me, eyes finally focusing. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy, I'm here." "Is Mom okay?" I had to take a breath before I could answer. "She's okay. She's awake. She's asking about you." He nodded slowly. Then, "I don't want to go to the pumpkin patch anymore." I almost laughed. "Yeah," I said. "Me neither." The hospital kept Darcy for another week. I took leave from work. Vince covered some of my shifts, told the boss I'd be out for a while. Cole went back to school once he was stable enough, staying with our neighbor Julia during the days while I stayed at the hospital. Julia was a retired teacher in her 60s who'd lived next door since before we bought the house. When she heard about the accident, she showed up at the hospital with a casserole and coloring books for Cole. During that week, my phone lit up constantly, but not with concern. My mom sent a photo of her empty medicine cabinet. No message. Just the photo. My dad texted twice, both times about the mortgage. And Haley. Haley sent me a voice message that made me want to throw my phone against the wall. She said she heard about the accident, said it was dramatic as usual. Then she said, and I quote, "Honestly, if something happened to Darcy, would that really be the worst thing? She's always been such a witch to me. Maybe this is karma." I listened to that message 3 times. Not because I couldn't believe it, because I wanted to make sure I had it saved. She also mentioned how I'd probably use the accident to get more attention. Classic victim move, she called it. Like my wife being airlifted was some kind of publicity stunt. I saved that part too. The day after Darcy came home, I drove to my parents' house. They lived in a split level in Independence, about 20 minutes from us. The house I'd been paying for. The house they'd apparently forgotten I had legal ownership of. My dad answered the door in his bathrobe. It was 2 p.m. He looked annoyed. Asked if I was there to drop off a check. I told him no. I told him I was there to have a conversation about the house. He let me in. My mom was on the couch watching some reality show. Haley was in the kitchen, probably raiding their fridge since she did that constantly. Todd was nowhere to be seen. Probably hiding. I stood in the living room and laid it out. Told them I knew they'd seen my message. The one about the accident. The one about Darcy being in surgery and Cole being in shock. My mom didn't even look up from the TV. "We knew you'd handle it. You always do." Handle it? My wife almost died. My dad crossed his arms. But she didn't. "So what's the problem?" That's when Haley walked in. She had this smirk on her face. This looked like she'd been waiting for this confrontation just so she could make it worse. Honestly, it's not like we were going to rush to the hospital for her. She's never liked us anyway. I heard the voice message, Haley. The one where you said maybe Darcy dying would be a good thing. She didn't even flinch. It was a joke. Learn to take a joke. I looked at my parents. Waited for one of them to say something. To tell her that was out of line. To show any sign of basic human decency. My dad just sighed. "We don't have time for this. Just tell us about the mortgage." That's when I told them. I told them I was done paying. That the mortgage, the utilities, the phone plan, all of it was finished. And since my name was on the deed, and I'd been the one making payments for 3 years. I was giving them 60 days to find a new place to live. The room went silent. My mom finally turned away from the TV, actually looking at me for what might have been the first time since I walked in. My dad's face went from red to purple. Haley's smirk disappeared. My dad sputtered, said I couldn't do that it was their house, that they'd lived there for 15 years, that I was just a name on a piece of paper. I pulled out the paperwork I'd brought, the quitclaim deed they'd signed 3 years ago, transferring full ownership to me, the mortgage statements showing I was the sole borrower, the letter from my attorney Harlow, confirming that as the legal owner, I could terminate their tenancy with proper notice. Since they'd never signed a lease and paid no rent, they were month-to-month occupants at best. 60 days was generous, not a day more. 60 days to find a new place, pack their things, and get out. After that, I'd file for formal eviction and let the sheriff handle it. My mom started crying, the manipulative kind. It didn't work anymore. My dad stood up, got in my face, close enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath. He said I was making a mistake, that I'd regret this. That blood was thicker than water, and I'd come crawling back. I told him blood hadn't done much for me lately, that I'd rather have people who actually showed up. He didn't have a response to that. Haley, of course, couldn't stay quiet. She said I was pathetic, that Darcy had turned me against my own family, that this was all her fault and I was too whipped to see it. I told her I had her voice message saved, the one where she said she hoped my wife would die. Her face went pale. I told them all 60 days. Then I walked out, didn't slam the door, didn't yell, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. Just left. Let the quiet do the talking. I expected pushback. What I got was full-on warfare. Within 48 hours, Haley had posted on Facebook about how I was abandoning our elderly parents. Made me sound like some kind of monster who was throwing frail old people out on the street. Conveniently left out the part where they'd been living rent-free in a house I paid for. Left out everything that didn't fit her narrative. The post got shared dozens of times. Distant relatives I hadn't spoken to in years started messaging me. Aunts, uncles, cousins. All of them had opinions. None of them asked for my side. I screenshotted everything, saved it all, then muted notifications and went on with my life. My dad left voicemails, multiple per day for the first week. They started pleading and gradually shifted to threatening. He said he'd sue me, said he'd hired a lawyer, said his lawyer said I had no case, said I was going to lose everything. I had Harlow look into it. Turned out my dad hadn't hired anyone. He was bluffing, hoping I'd back down if he sounded confident enough. I didn't. My mom tried the guilt angle next. Sent me a long email about everything she'd sacrificed for me growing up. Made it sound like I owed her a lifetime of servitude for the basic act of parenting. I didn't reply. Vince came over the following weekend to help me install security cameras. He'd seen the Facebook drama, followed the comment threads, and was worried things might escalate further. We put cameras at the front door, back door, garage, and driveway. Ran the feeds to an app on my phone so I could check them anywhere. Smart move. Essential, as it turned out. Vince also suggested I start documenting everything. Dates, times, screenshots, recordings. Keep it in a folder. He'd been through a messy divorce and learned that memory isn't evidence. Courts want paper. I started building that paper trail the same night. 3 days later, Haley showed up unannounced. It was a Wednesday evening. Darcy was resting in the bedroom. Cole was doing homework at the kitchen table. I was making dinner when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Haley standing on my porch with her 2 daughters, Ruby and Sophie, ages 8 and 5. Both girls looked confused and tired. Haley looked furious. Hair a mess, makeup smeared, that wild look in her eyes that meant she was either completely unhinged or very desperate. Watch them. I've got somewhere to be. No. Excuse me? I said no. Take your kids and leave. She laughed. This bitter, ugly laugh. You've done it before. You'll do it again. You don't have the guts to actually follow through on anything. Try me. She stared at me for a second, like she was waiting for me to crack. When I didn't, she turned around, got in her car, and drove away. Didn't look back. Didn't hesitate. Just left her kids standing there on my porch, like packages she was dropping off. Then I pulled out my phone and called the police. I explained the situation. Said my sister had abandoned her minor children on my property without consent. Said I needed an officer to document it. I let the girls inside because it was getting cold. Made them mac and cheese. Put on a movie. The officer showed up about 40 minutes later, took my statement, took photos, asked if I wanted to press charges for abandoning minors. I said yes. He looked surprised. Most people don't follow through, he said. They let it slide. I told him I was done letting things slide. The officer shook his head when I explained the situation. Said he sees this more than people think. Parents using kids as pawns. Siblings who think rules don't apply. He took extra notes. Said this one had legs. They tracked Haley down at a restaurant in Westport. She'd been there for 2 hours. When the cops showed up, she apparently threw a fit. Accused them of harassment. Accused me of overreacting. Made a whole scene. They cited her for child endangerment. The girls were taken by a social worker temporarily, while Todd was contacted. He picked them up from the station looking shell-shocked. Haley called me that night, screaming. Said I'd ruined her life. Said her kids were traumatized because of me. Said she'd never forgive me. I told her she was the one who left them on a porch and took off. She hung up. The next day, my dad showed up at my house. I saw him pull into the driveway from the living room window. Told Darcy to stay in the bedroom with Cole. Told her not to come out no matter what she heard. I met him on the porch before he could knock. He looked older than I remembered. Angrier. Started yelling before I could say a word. You ruined her life. Your own sister. The cops took her kids. She left them on my porch. She took off. Because she needed a break. Because you cut everyone off and she's been dealing with... She left her children unattended. That's on her. He stepped closer. Got in my face. You're no son of mine. You hear me? You're dead to this family. 53 days, Dad. Then you're out of the house. He swung at me. I saw it coming. Stepped back. He missed, stumbled, nearly fell off the porch. 64 years old, bad back, and he tried to throw a punch like he was still in his 20s. Julia, my neighbor, was out watering her plants. She saw the whole thing. You need me to call the police? She called out. My dad looked at her, then back at me. His face was red. His hands were shaking. Get off my property, I said. Next time you show up, I won't just step back. He left, peeled out of the driveway like a teenager. I filed a police report that afternoon. Attempted assault, trespassing. Julia gave a witness statement. The officer suggested a no trespass order, which I signed on the spot. Now if my dad showed up again, it wasn't just a family dispute. It was a crime. Vince called me that night. Said the Facebook posts were getting worse. Haley was painting me as an abuser now. Saying I'd called the cops on innocent children. Saying I was trying to make my elderly parents homeless. I told Vince I didn't care what she posted. I had documentation. I had recordings. I had a paper trail a mile long. He said just be careful. Desperate people do desperate things. He wasn't wrong. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Haley's custody situation got complicated fast. The child endangerment charge triggered a CPS investigation. Todd was furious with her. From what I heard through Julia, they were fighting constantly. Screaming matches at 2 a.m. Turns out this wasn't the first time Haley had left the kids somewhere without supervision. Just the first time someone had actually reported it. CPS found a pattern. Neighbors who'd seen the girls alone in the yard. A babysitter who'd been stiffed on payment and had stories to tell. Todd started talking to a divorce attorney. Apparently, he had been keeping receipts too. Every time Haley blew money they didn't have. Every lie she told. He'd been building his own exit strategy for months. My phone call about the kids on the porch was just the thing that pushed him over the edge. My parents dug in, refused to leave the house, said they'd fight the eviction in court, said I had no legal standing, said their lawyer, the one that didn't exist, was going to destroy me. Harlow laughed when I told him that. Actually laughed, said the deed was clear. The payment history was clear. Missouri law was clear. They could fight all they wanted, but the outcome was inevitable. He filed the formal eviction notice on day 14, served by a process server who apparently got an earful from my dad about respecting his elders. Julia became a regular presence during this time. She'd stop by with food, offer to watch Cole when Darcy needed rest. One afternoon, while Darcy was napping, Julia and I sat on my porch drinking coffee. November in Kansas City. She asked how I was holding up. Actually asked. I told her the truth. I was tired, bone tired. But I was also relieved. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for years, and finally set it down. She nodded. She said she'd watched my family come and go over the years. Seen the way they showed up in nice cars with empty hands. Seen the way they treated me like a resource rather than a person. She said some families just take and take. And sometimes the best thing you can do is stop giving. On day 32, my mom tried a different approach. She showed up at my door with tears streaming down her face. Full performance, shaking hands, quivering lip, the works. She begged me to reconsider. Said she was sorry for the way things had gone. Said Haley was out of control, that my dad was just stressed, that they never meant to hurt me. We're your parents, she said. Doesn't that count for anything? You left me alone in a hospital. For 3 days. We didn't know how bad it was. You didn't ask. That's the point. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can't we just start over? I looked at her for a long time, then asked the only question that mattered. When Darcy was in surgery, when Cole wasn't speaking, when I sat in that hospital room waiting to find out if my wife was going to live or die, why didn't you call? She didn't have an answer, just stood there with her mouth open. 28 days, I said. Then you're out. She left. That night, someone threw a rock through our living room window. Darcy screamed. Cole came running from his room. Glass everywhere. I found a note wrapped around the rock. 3 words. You'll regret this. I called the police. They took the note, asked if I had any idea who might have done it. I had a pretty good idea. The security cameras Vince installed caught a car driving by slowly right before the window broke. Dark sedan. Couldn't make out the plates, but I recognized the shape. It looked a lot like Todd's car. I told the officer. He said they'd look into it. Turned out another neighbor 2 doors down had a Ring camera that caught a better angle. Partial plate, clear shot of the passenger side window rolling down. That was enough to bring Todd in for questioning. He folded in about 20 minutes. 2 days later, Haley was arrested for criminal mischief and intimidation. Todd had confessed that she'd made him drive while she threw the rock. Claimed he didn't know what she was planning until she rolled down the window. The cops didn't fully buy his innocent act, but Haley was clearly the one driving this train wreck. The charges were adding up now. Haley's life was imploding, and she had no one to blame but herself. My dad went quiet after that. No more calls. No more voicemails. I think the reality was finally sinking in. Day 60 arrived. Temperature in the 20s. The kind of Missouri cold that cuts right through you. I drove to the house in Independence with Harlow, a locksmith named Earl who'd done work for me before, and a sheriff's deputy who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The eviction had been processed through the courts, signed and stamped and official. The 60-day notice period had expired. Legally, my parents had no right to be there anymore. The drive felt weird. 20 minutes through familiar streets, past landmarks from my childhood, toward a house that had been a source of both comfort and pain. I'd spent Christmases there, birthdays, but I'd also spent years pouring money into it while getting nothing back. Years of being treated like an obligation rather than a son. My dad answered the door. He looked like the fight had drained out of him over the past 2 months. The bluster was gone. The threats had dried up. The deputy explained the situation. The house was being reclaimed by the legal owner. They had 1 hour to collect their essential belongings. Anything left behind would be considered abandoned property. My mom was sitting on the couch, crying. I didn't feel good watching it. I want to be clear about that. These were still my parents. People I'd loved once, or at least tried to love, but I also didn't feel guilty. They'd had countless chances. They'd chosen to ignore every single one. They were gone within 45 minutes. Loaded what they could into their car and my mom's sister's truck. Haley was notably absent, probably dealing with her own legal mess. The locksmith changed all the locks. I signed some paperwork. I walked through the empty house afterward. Just me and my attorney. 3 years of mortgage payments. Countless holidays spent in that living room. I told the attorney I wanted to sell it. Wanted it gone. He said he'd get the listing started. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Quiet. The kind that comes when you finally stop dealing with someone else's mess. Darcy was waiting for me when I got back. She was standing in the kitchen, leaning on the counter for support, because she still got tired easily, but she was smiling. How'd it go? It's done. They're out. How do you feel? I thought about it. Lighter. She crossed the room slowly, wrapped her arms around me, and held on. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Cole came running in from the living room and joined the hug, squeezing my leg like he was afraid I'd disappear. We stood there for a long time, the 3 of us. In our house. In our life. Finally free. The house in Independence sold in February. Quick sale, cash buyer, $20,000 over asking. My attorney handled the paperwork. I didn't even drive by to watch the closing. I gave my parents nothing from the sale. Legally, I didn't have to. And honestly, I felt the same way. They'd taken enough from me over the years. We were square now. Haley's legal situation got worse before it got better. The child endangerment charge stuck. She lost primary custody of her girls. Todd got them during the week. She got weekends, supervised. The criminal mischief and intimidation charges resulted in probation and mandatory anger management. I heard through Julia, who somehow knew everyone in a 30-mile radius and had sources, that Haley blamed me for everything. Said I'd destroyed her family. Said I'd ruined her life. Said she'd never speak to me again. I was okay with that. More than okay. Relieved, actually. The guy who hit us got prison time. Vehicular assault. Reckless endangerment. Fleeing the scene. His lawyer tried to argue medical episode. The judge didn't buy it. The Chiefs fan who tackled him testified. So did the EMTs. My parents moved in with my mom's sister in Blue Springs. A small house, 1 bathroom. Nothing like the 3-bedroom they'd been living in rent-free. From what Julia heard, my aunt wasn't thrilled about the arrangement. My mom's spending habits and my dad's entitlement were apparently causing friction. The kind that strains even blood relationships. Funny how that works. My dad's health declined after the move. Stress, probably. I didn't keep tabs, didn't send cards, didn't call on holidays. They'd made their choice when they ignored that message. When they decided I was nothing more than an ATM with a pulse. Once you close a door like that, it stays closed. What I did keep tabs on was my own family. Darcy's recovery took the better part of a year. Physical therapy 3 times a week at first, then twice, then once. By summer, she was back to work part-time. By fall, full-time. Cole bounced back faster than either of us. Kids are like that. He went back to his dinosaurs, his arm wrestling challenges, his endless questions about everything. He didn't ask about his grandparents much. When he did, we told him the truth in age-appropriate terms. Sometimes people make bad choices. Sometimes you have to protect yourself from people who hurt you, even if they're family. He seemed to understand. Vince became a regular at our weekend barbecues. He'd bring food and bad jokes and whatever girlfriend he was seeing that month. Cole loved him, called him Uncle Vince. Julia stayed our neighbor, our friend, our backup. She babysat Cole when we needed a night out. She brought soup when Darcy had her final surgery to remove some scar tissue. She became, in a lot of ways, more family than my actual family had ever been. Spring came, then summer, then fall again. A full year since the accident. On the anniversary, Darcy and I dropped Cole off at Julia's and went to dinner. Just the 2 of us. A nice place downtown, the kind we never went to because who has the time? We talked about everything except the accident. At one point, Darcy reached across the table and took my hand. You okay? Yeah, I think I finally am. She smiled. Thank you. For standing up, for choosing us. We drove home through the quiet streets, windows down. Cole was asleep when we picked him up. I carried him inside, tucked him into bed, stood in his doorway watching him. No more guilt, no more demands, no more being the backup plan for people who only remembered I existed when they needed something. Just peace. And honestly, I had to fight for it. Had to set boundaries and actually enforce them, even when it hurt. Some people spend their whole lives waiting for their family to show up. I stopped waiting, built something real with the people who actually mattered, and figured out that family isn't really about blood. It's about who stays, who shows up when things get rough, who chooses you because of who you are, not what you can do for them. My family never got that, and I'm done trying to explain it to them. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks. I funded a $28,000 family trip to Dubai for my dad's retirement. We gave your seat to your sister's fiance, Mom texted. So I canceled everything. Their dream trip turned into a nightmare. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey Reddit, didn't think I'd be airing my family drama here, but this one's too good not to share. I paid for a dream trip to Dubai for my dad. My sister demanded her deadbeat fiance come too, and that I cover it. I refused. So they stole my identity and gave him my seat. I made sure they got a vacation from hell. I'm 32 male, a project manager for a commercial signage company in Fort Worth. Started as an installer, climbing scaffolding and mounting signs in Texas summer heat when it was 105 degrees and the metal would literally burn your skin if you weren't wearing gloves. Worked my way up through skill and hustle. Now I oversee contracts for everything from local stadiums to corporate buildings. Last quarter alone, I managed $1.3 million in projects, all delivered on schedule and under budget. I make around $85,000 a year, plus bonuses when projects go well. My parents hit rough times during COVID 4 years ago. Dad worked construction sales for decades, killing it until the pandemic hit and the industry tanked. He was pulling in 6 figures selling commercial-grade materials to developers across 3 states. Then, everything froze overnight. Mom hasn't held a steady job, always with a new excuse. back problems, changing job market. Now it's her candle-making business that somehow costs more than it makes. When their landlord sold their rental house, they faced potential homelessness. They asked if I could help just until they got back on their feet. I've always been practical with money. I still drive a 12-year-old Toyota 4Runner with 187,000 miles on it while still running smoothly. Even though I could afford something newer, it runs flawlessly, it's paid off, and it's built to last. But I had the foresight to buy a second property as an investment in 2018. Nothing fancy, just a decent two-bedroom condo in a safe area that had good rental potential. I put down 20% to avoid PMI and locked in a solid 3.5% 30-year fixed rate before rates went crazy. I agreed to let my parents move in at $800 a month, about a third of market rate. The mortgage is $1,400 plus $320 in HOA fees, so I was actually losing money every month. I figured they'd be grateful for the help, get back on their feet, and either start paying market rate or find their own place within a year. Fast forward 4 years, and that rent money has shown up roughly 60% of the time. My parents have shorted me about $15,000 in rent over 4 years. Megan moving in 2 years ago only made things worse. We'll catch up next month, became their motto. Right alongside, why are you being so difficult about this? My sister, 26 female. Megan is her own special category of entitlement. She has a marketing degree, party girl who suddenly became career-focused when the real world started demanding actual work. She moved in with my parents about 2 years ago after her roommates got tired of covering her share of the rent. She tried the freelance social media consultant route for about 3 months before landing an entry-level job at a local marketing agency. Complained constantly about being undervalued, despite having zero portfolio to show. She makes about $42,000, but spends like she's making $120,000. Anytime I'd bring up the missing rent, Mom would hit me with, "We're family, not some corporation. Why are you nickel and diming us?" Meanwhile, they never missed a payment on their new SUV or Megan's monthly spa treatments. Dad once told me with a straight face that they couldn't afford rent that month because they had to pay for Megan's $400 hair extensions. Last year, I drove over unannounced on a Saturday and found them hosting a backyard BBQ with about 20 people. They'd installed a new 75-inch TV I hadn't seen before and had apparently just finished a kitchen remodel with granite countertops. When I asked about the rent money they owed me, Mom whispered, "Not now, we have guests." Like I was being the rude one. The breaking point came when Dad finally retired in March. Unlike most construction guys, he managed to avoid major injuries, though his knees are completely shot from years of job site visits. He needs replacement surgery, but keeps putting it off. For years, he'd talk about wanting to see Dubai. Greatest construction achievement of our time, he'd say, like he personally advised on the Burj Khalifa blueprint. He had this coffee table book about Dubai skyscrapers that he'd flip through at least once a week, telling anyone who'd listen about the engineering marvels. I decided to make it happen as a retirement gift, figured it would finally earn some appreciation and maybe reset our relationship. $28,000 for a 10-day trip to Dubai, first-class Emirates flights from DFW, 4-star hotel near the Burj Khalifa, desert safari excursions, the works. I spent weeks researching the best time to go, even connected with my college buddy James, who's been working for an engineering firm there for 3 years. Guy's living like a king in an expat compound, driving a Mercedes he got tax-free. He promised to show us the real Dubai, not just the tourist traps. When I announced the trip at dinner, the initial shock and gratitude lasted about 5 minutes before Megan asked if Trevor could come. Freaking Trevor. Trevor is my sister's fiancé, and what happens when privilege meets delusion. Imagine every LinkedIn cliché packed into one 29-year-old with perfect teeth and a trust fund he pretends doesn't exist. He calls himself a serial entrepreneur and disruptive business strategist, but his actual business model consists of talking about business while others pay his bills. His LinkedIn profile reads like AI-generated corporate bullshit. Lots of leveraging synergies, but zero actual revenue. His profile picture is him in front of a rented Tesla, pointing at nothing while wearing a Patagonia vest. Classic. His venture capital connections consist of a second cousin who works as an administrative assistant at a firm that once invested in a failed meal kit startup. He constantly name-drops tech companies like he has inside knowledge, but it's all stuff he read on TechCrunch that morning. Every conversation with him eventually turns into a pitch for his latest venture, which is always just vague enough that you can't actually tell what the business does. Last Thanksgiving, he cornered me for 40 minutes explaining his revolutionary app idea. The entire concept was basically Uber, but for dog walking. which already exists in about 12 different forms. He has an uncanny ability to order the most expensive item on any menu while simultaneously reaching for his phone when the check arrives. Classic move. Oh, I need to respond to this email real quick, followed by a 15-minute bathroom break that mysteriously coincides with bill paying time. I initially said no to Trevor joining. I was maxing out my budget for 4 people. Megan immediately went full Karen. Why do you always have to ruin everything? It's not like you can't afford it with your fancy project manager job. She conveniently ignored the fact that her marketing specialist role paid her enough to afford a weekend trip to Austin, not a luxury Dubai vacation. My parents sided with her. Mom's classic guilt trip. But we're family, and Trevor is going to be family soon. Don't you want your father to have everyone there for his retirement celebration? Dad joined in. Son, it would mean a lot to have everyone there. Trevor's actually quite knowledgeable about international business. I looked Trevor dead in the eye and said, if you want to come, you can pay your own way. Should be pocket change for someone with your business acumen. The way his face twitched told me everything I needed to know about his bank account. He mumbled something about liquidating some assets and transferring funds from offshore accounts, which I'm pretty sure was code for asking my daddy for money. The subject seemed to drop after a few days. I thought they'd finally accepted my boundaries. I should have known better. These are people who believe boundaries are just suggestions, like speed limits or tax laws. I remember Trevor was bragging about how a college buddy of his now worked TSA at DFW. He said if I ever needed a favor, he'd take care of it. Trevor smirked. I thought he was full of it. Now, it all made sense. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. 2 weeks before the trip, Trevor cornered me in my parents' kitchen while I was grabbing coffee. So I've been thinking about maximizing our Dubai opportunity, he said, not looking up from his phone. Uh-huh, I replied, not giving a shit while I poured myself a cup of coffee I'd brought over. We need to book meetings with real estate developers while we're there. The UAE market is primed for disruption, and I've got concepts they'll want to hear. I laughed, thinking he was joking. He wasn't. Seriously, all the big players are there. Emaar Properties, Nakheel, Damac. This could be the perfect chance to secure some seed funding for my next venture. Not in the budget, Trevor. I'm already covering the entire $28,000 for the family trip. I'd actually checked out these companies while planning the trip. The idea that they'd take a meeting with a random American with no portfolio, credentials, or actual business plan was laughable. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime networking opportunity, he pressed, finally looking up from his phone. I've been developing a concept for a revolutionary co-living space that combines WeWork with high-end residential. So, an apartment building with desks? I asked. His eyes narrowed. It's more nuanced than that. It's about creating synergistic living environments that foster cross-pollination of ideas while maximizing square footage utility. Right. Still not in the budget. That evening, Megan confronted me about it, calling me a jerk for not helping with Trevor's important business opportunity. According to her, I was sabotaging his career because I was jealous of his vision. I stood my ground. The trip was for Dad's retirement, not Trevor's imaginary business deals. Fast forward to departure day. I was finishing paperwork on a project when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. We've decided that Trevor is coming on the trip instead of you. He's more fun and will take better photos for social media. Your father agrees he'll be better company than you would be. I stared at my phone. My stomach dropped. Was this some kind of sick joke? I replied, asking what she meant. She said, I shit you not. Trevor was taking my seat, and I could always go on another trip sometime. They needed Trevor there for his business connections anyway. I replied with one word, understood. Then I closed my office door and did what they least expected. I called Emirates directly to investigate what was happening. The agent confirmed I was checked in for departure in 3 hours, while I was sitting in my office 20 miles away. After speaking with supervisors, I discovered that Megan had called Emirates a week earlier, claiming I had a medical emergency. She tried to get the ticket changed to Trevor's name, but Emirates doesn't allow easy name transfers. Instead, they plan to have Trevor use my boarding pass and somehow clear security. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was fraud. I called Emirates back and spoke to their fraud department. Since everything was booked under my name and credit card, I had leverage. While they couldn't stop passengers already checked in for today's flight, they could flag the return portion for security review. I then requested a full cancellation and refund of the return tickets, citing fraud. Next, I logged into Booking.com and canceled the hotel reservations. Then, I methodically called each tour company and canceled every excursion. I called James in Dubai to explain the situation. They were about to board a flight to a country they'd never visited, thinking everything was paid for. But I'd canceled it all. They'd kicked me off my own trip to bring Trevor instead. That's cold, man. He paused. Also completely deserved. What are they going to do when they land? Figure it out, I guess. Dubai isn't exactly budget-friendly for unprepared tourists. A decent meal at a mid-range restaurant would run $50 to $75 per person. A taxi from the airport to the city center would be around $50. Their emergency fund would evaporate within 48 hours. Then I called my bank and reported my credit card as compromised. Had a new one issued with a different number. Froze my other accounts temporarily, just in case anyone had my account details. I wasn't taking any chances. These people had proven they felt entitled to my money. My best friend Matt always saw through their BS and warned me, but I didn't think much about it. So I texted him. Remember that conversation about consequences? It's happening now. He came over that night with drinks and his buddy Ryan, who works as a locksmith. By 10 p.m., every lock in my rental property had been changed, new security cameras installed, and a keypad lockbox mounted by the front door. I contacted a property management company I'd networked with through work. Had them draw up a formal lease agreement at full market rate, $2,850 per month, utilities not included, first and last month's rent due, immediately upon signing. Finally, I called my real estate attorney. I'd used him before for property matters, and he quickly drew up an official eviction notice giving them 30 days to either sign the new lease or vacate the premises. That wasn't all. While my real estate attorney was drawing up the eviction paperwork, I explained how Trevor had used my personal information to board the flight. He'd essentially committed identity theft. My attorney, who also handled criminal cases, immediately saw the opportunity. "We need to document this fully," he said. "This isn't just a family dispute anymore. It's potentially criminal fraud." I filed a police report the next morning, bringing copies of my text messages, screenshots of the original booking confirmation, and the flight records showing someone had used my ticket. The officer taking the report looked impressed by my documentation. "Most identity theft cases don't have this level of evidence," he said. "Usually it's just a mysterious charge on someone's credit card, not a fully documented case with admissions in text messages." I also called Emirates back and asked to speak to their fraud department. The rep was professionally horrified when I explained what happened. "Sir, this is a serious security breach," she said. "Someone using another person's boarding pass and identification is something we track very closely." She flagged the incident for internal review and assured me they'd be investigating. "And remember Trevor's TSA buddy? Seems like the guy helped him bypass the ID check." Emirates didn't catch the mismatch until the return leg, which triggered a security review. My attorney sent a formal cease and desist letter regarding the identity theft and helped me file charges for identity fraud and misuse of personal information. Their Emirates flight landed in Dubai around 7 p.m. local time. I imagine the excitement as they deplaned, all smiles and Instagram stories, ready for their luxury vacation. Except there was no hotel shuttle waiting, no reservation, no return flights. Matt came over to my place that night with pizza and drinks. We also spent some time setting up a detailed spreadsheet, tracking every penny they'd borrowed or taken from me over the years, with dates, amounts, and any promises made about repayment. The first panicked call hit my phone around 9 p.m. my time. I didn't answer. Then another, and another. My phone started blowing up with text messages, which Matt and I read out loud between bites of pizza. "Megan, what the heck did you do?" "Trevor, this is completely unprofessional and potentially illegal. My attorney will be contacting you." "Mom, please call us back. We don't know what to do." I replied with a single text. "Enjoy Dubai with Trevor. I hear he's more fun than I am." Then I turned off my phone and enjoyed the first peaceful night I'd had in months. Matt couldn't stop laughing. "Dude, Trevor's attorney? What attorney represents people who can't afford their own plane tickets?" "The same one who handles all his billion-dollar deals," I replied, reaching for another slice of pizza. 2 days later, I turned my phone back on. The messages were becoming interesting. "Dad, we had to call Trevor's father to wire emergency money. You've embarrassed me in front of my new family member." "Megan, Trevor fell off a camel during the desert tour we had to book last minute. He broke his arm and can't take photos of anything now. Mom's so upset. This is all you fault. Screw you." Amazing how my fault extends to a pissed-off camel. From their messages, I pieced together a pretty clear picture of their Habibi adventure. They were stranded at the airport with no hotel reservation, no transportation, and rapidly dwindling funds. They had to call Trevor's parents to wire emergency cash. That must have been a fun conversation. "Hey, Dad, we need $5,000 wired immediately, or we'll be sleeping in the airport." They spent 3 nights in a budget hotel by the airport that apparently had Cockroaches the size of mice. Based on my research, they probably paid about $400 per night for this privilege. Dubai's version of a budget hotel is still priced for oil barons compared to American standards. The coup de grace was Trevor having to sell his vintage Rolex, definitely a knockoff, to cover some expenses. From what I could gather through their texts, he got about $500 for a watch he claimed was worth $12,000. Tragic. So, they landed back in Texas 5 days after they left, spent most of the trip panicking, broke, and apparently being chased by stray dogs near their budget hotel. According to Megan's angry texts, they spent most of their time arguing in the hotel room, with Trevor blaming her for the vacation from hell, and my parents questioning their future son-in-law's business acumen. My favorite, though? They apparently tried to visit the Burj Khalifa but couldn't afford the observation deck tickets. So the centerpiece of Dad's dream trip was something they only saw from the ground. Sucks to suck. When they pulled up to my place in an Uber, I was standing in the driveway with Matt. We were casually drinking coffees, looking like we'd been having the time of our lives while they were suffering in Dubai. I'd positioned both our cars in the driveway, my 4Runner and his Tacoma, so they couldn't pull in. What the actual heck was that? My dad shouted as he got out of the car, his face lobster red from either the desert sun or rage. I took a slow sip of my coffee. That was what consequences look like. You stranded us in a foreign country, my mother screamed. We could have died. Yet here you are, I observed. Alive and well. Minus one functional arm, I see. I nodded toward Trevor, whose arm was in a makeshift sling. Trevor stepped forward, wincing. You realize what you've done is actionable, right? I have contacts at 3 major law firms who would take this case pro bono. Matt snorted. Damn, that must be convenient. Do these law firms also provide medical care for camel-related injuries? Because that sling looks like it was made by a toddler with a dish towel. You have no idea what we've been through, Dad growled. Trevor broke his arm when the camel threw him. The hotel they put us in had no working air conditioning. Megan got food poisoning from a street vendor. We had to sleep in the airport one night because our credit cards wouldn't work, my mother added. And the embassy was absolutely no help at all. This last part didn't surprise me at all. What did they expect the embassy to do? Hello, American Embassy? My son paid for a luxury vacation and then canceled it when we uninvited him. Please send the Marines. Don't forget the camel incident, I said, unable to hide my smirk. I heard that was particularly traumatic. Trevor's face turned an even deeper shade of red. That camel was clearly not trained properly. I specifically told the guide I was an experienced rider. Oh, I'm sure you did, Matt muttered, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Right after you told him about your Fortune 500 connections and cryptocurrency portfolio? Megan was almost in tears now. We had to call Trevor's dad for money. Do you know how humiliating that was? Almost as humiliating as uninviting someone from a trip they paid for, I suggested. You never answered our calls, Mom nearly screamed. We didn't know what to do. Well, you figured it out, didn't you? And from what I hear, Dubai has one of the lowest crime rates in the world. Plus, you had Trevor, the international business expert. I figured you were in capable hands. That's when I reached into my back pocket and pulled out the lease agreement and eviction notice. Since we're having a heart-to-heart, let me set some things clear. Here are the new terms for the condo. $2,850 per month, utilities not included. First and last month's rent due immediately. You have 30 days to either sign this new lease or vacate the premises. They stared at the papers like I'd handed them a death sentence. This is illegal, Trevor started. You can't just... It's completely legal, I cut him off. You were never on any lease. My parents have been month-to-month tenants paying well below market rate, and I've decided to change the terms. It's all laid out in black and white. What? Why? We don't have that kind of money right now, Mom protested. Not my problem, I replied. I'm sure Trevor's parents can help you out again, like they did in Dubai. My father stepped forward, his voice suddenly soft. Son, this is extreme. We're talking about your family here. No, this isn't about family. It's about business. And business is what I'm doing now. As they turned to leave, I added one final point. Oh, and the locks have been changed. Your new keys will be provided after you sign the lease and pay the first and last month's rent. You can get access to retrieve your belongings by contacting the property management company listed on page 3. They didn't sign the new lease. They also didn't leave. The 30 days came and went, with them ignoring my property manager's calls and emails. They thought they could wait me out, that I'd eventually soften and let them go back to the way things were. They were wrong. I filed for eviction exactly 1 day after the deadline passed. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. During that time, they alternated between ignoring me completely and sending manipulative messages. Mom, I raised you better than this. Dad. No son of mine would treat family this way. Megan. I hope you're happy destroying our lives for your petty revenge. Each message just reinforced that I'd made the right decision. Not once did they acknowledge their role in creating this situation. Not once did they offer to make amends or take responsibility. It was always about what I was doing to them, never about what they had done to me. While the eviction process was playing out, I wasn't just sitting idle. The identity theft angle was moving forward too. The police report I'd filed got assigned to a detective who specialized in fraud cases. He called me for a follow-up interview and seemed genuinely interested when I handed over the texts, screenshots, and flight records showing how Trevor had used my identity to board the flight. This is pretty clear-cut, the detective said. Most identity theft is harder to prove, but they basically admitted to it in writing. Yeah, they weren't exactly geniuses. The Emirates Fraud Department also completed their review. An airline representative called to inform me they'd flagged Trevor's passport in their system and confirmed my original suspicion. He'd used my boarding pass and identifying information to get through security and board the flight. My attorney was methodical about the whole process. He filed the identity theft and fraud charges separately from the eviction proceedings, explaining that mixing them would only complicate both cases. Let the criminal justice system handle the identity fraud while we focus on getting your property back, he advised. The courts don't like when people try to combine civil and criminal matters. I used those 2 weeks productively. Met with my financial advisor to adjust my investment strategy now that I wasn't subsidizing 3 adults. Started talking to a real estate agent about potential properties in up-and-coming neighborhoods. Even reactivated my dating profile after a 2-year hiatus. The judge at the eviction hearing was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who had clearly seen every sob story in the book. My attorney presented the case. Tenants refusing to sign a new lease or vacate, history of irregular payments, property owners' right to adjust terms. Their defense consisted mainly of, but we're family, and we've lived there for years, neither of which impressed the judge. Dad tried bringing up his knee problems and retirement, but the judge cut him off with a raised hand. Sir, medical conditions, while unfortunate, do not create tenancy rights, she said, peering over her glasses. Trevor tried to argue that as Megan's fiancé, he had some kind of right to be involved. The judge shut that down so fast I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Young man, unless your name is on a lease or you have established residency for the legally required period, you have no standing in these proceedings, she told him, not even trying to hide her annoyance. The ruling came down in my favor. They had 5 days to vacate the premises. 5 days. As we left the courthouse, my mother grabbed my arm. You can't do this to us. Where are we supposed to go in 5 days? Maybe ask Trevor. He's practically family now, right? Trevor stepped forward. My parents aren't going to house your family. That's your responsibility. I laughed. Funny how your entrepreneurial spirit doesn't extend to solving actual problems. What happened to all those UAE investors you were going to impress? That meeting would have happened if you hadn't sabotaged the trip, he shot back. Right, I nodded. I'm sure the sheikhs were lined up to throw money at... What exactly is your business again? I've known you for over 2 years and still have no idea what you actually do. What Trevor didn't know was that his identity theft problems were just beginning. 2 days after the eviction hearing, he and Megan were served with papers for the fraud case. The look on his face when he realized this wasn't going away was priceless. Like watching someone who'd never faced consequences suddenly understand that actions have repercussions. They spent those 5 days alternating between begging, threatening, and guilt-tripping. None of it worked. On day 5, they finally moved out. My parents to my aunt's house, Trevor and Megan apparently to his parents' place, despite his earlier protests. When they left, they took everything that wasn't bolted down, including appliances that were part of the property: dishwasher, microwave, washer, and dryer. They also deliberately damaged several walls, breaking a bathroom mirror, and left all their trash. My property manager documented everything, and I filed a complaint for property damage. My attorney suggested I could take it to small claims court for the stolen appliances, but I decided to just track it and keep receipts. They weren't worth another legal battle. The replacement and repair costs came to about $4,200, which I added to the spreadsheet tracking their debt to me. Not that I expected to ever see a penny of it, but it felt important to keep the record straight. Megan texted me too. Hey, I know we had our issues, but maybe we can grab coffee and talk this out? I'm willing to forgive everything if you help us with the first month's rent somewhere else. I didn't respond. A day later, she texted again. Fine. Hope you enjoy being alone forever. Screw you. 2 days later, I got a text from my father. Your mother and I have decided that until you apologize and make this right, "You are no longer our son. We didn't raise you to be this heartless." I replied, "Understood. Best of luck with everything." My mother started calling everyone in the extended family, telling them how I had abandoned them when they needed me most, conveniently leaving out the years of financial support and the Dubai fiasco. My father started sending increasingly threatening texts. The last one included some pretty explicit threats about how I'd regret this decision for the rest of my life. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I forwarded the message to my attorney, who sent a cease and desist letter. When that didn't stop the messages, I filed for a restraining order. The restraining order was granted after I presented the judge with over 30 threatening messages. The court bailiff who served them the papers reported back that my father had gone on a tirade about ungrateful children and family loyalty. Meanwhile, the identity theft case was working its way through the system. They didn't end up in jail, but both Megan and Trevor were hit with misdemeanor charges and fines. It wasn't enough to land them behind bars, but it was enough to give them both criminal records. The DA wasn't interested in pursuing felony charges since it was a family matter, but he wasn't about to let them walk either. They offered a plea deal, misdemeanor charges in exchange for full cooperation and restitution. The DA said it wasn't worth wasting resources on a full-blown felony trial given the family context. The airline's security report sealed the deal. Emirates takes passenger identification very seriously, and their documentation of Trevor using my boarding pass was damning. The TSA agent who processed Trevor's boarding was also investigated. Turns out he was a friend of Trevor's from college who helped him bypass normal security protocols. He lost his job, and Emirates implemented stricter ID verification procedures as a result of the incident. Trevor got off with a misdemeanor because he claimed he was just using the boarding pass I gave him, and the TSA agent, his friend, corroborated this lie. The agent took most of the heat for bypassing proper verification procedures. Trevor ended up with a $5,000 fine and 200 hours of community service. Megan got a slightly lighter sentence, $2,500 and 100 hours, since Trevor was the one who actually boarded the plane. The DA said the texts alone weren't strong enough to show Megan knew Trevor was going to impersonate me. She denied involvement, and Trevor took the fall. Both her and Trevor were placed on probation for a year. The criminal records had immediate consequences. Megan lost a job offer at a marketing firm when it came up during her background check. She tried to explain it away as a misunderstanding, but fraud convictions aren't exactly minor issues for companies that handle financial information. Trevor's fake consulting business took an even bigger hit. Word got around about his criminal record, and suddenly those Fortune 500 connections he was always bragging about went silent. Turns out legitimate businesses aren't eager to work with someone convicted of fraud. Who knew? It's been a year since the Dubai disaster. I haven't heard from my immediate family since the restraining order was served. The silence has been surprisingly peaceful. I kept the condo, found reliable tenants who actually pay the full amount on time, and have been using the extra income to fund my hobbies and investments instead of subsidizing adult dependents. I used some of the newfound financial freedom to take an actual vacation of my own. 2 weeks in Costa Rica, surfing and hiking. Didn't post a single photo on social media. Just enjoyed it for what it was. My cousin Laura dropped by a few times throughout the year, keeping me updated on the family drama. My parents had moved from my aunt's house to another relative's, then another, burning bridges at each stop. They'd taken loans from various family members, promising to pay back as soon as their situation stabilized. None of those loans had been repaid. Most of the extended family had cut ties with them after realizing they were being used as temporary ATMs, a role I knew all too well. Trevor bailed on Megan about 2 months after the eviction, moving on to dating the daughter of a local restaurant owner. Megan wasn't doing well. She'd wasted a bunch of money on some online business scheme that turned out to be a scam, no doubt inspired by Trevor's entrepreneurial bullshit. She'd started drinking heavily and was living with roommates who were about to kick her out for not paying her share of utilities. My father's knee problems had worsened to the point where he needed surgery, but Medicare would only cover part of it. My mother was working part-time at a craft store, but still dumping money into her failed candle business. She'd even set up a GoFundMe for my dad's surgery that had raised a whopping $340 in 3 months. I checked it out one night after a few sodas and donated exactly $1, just so they'd see my name on the donor list. According to Laura, my name had become synonymous with betrayal in family conversations. They'd rewritten history completely. Now I was the villain who had abandoned them without warning, after years of them helping me build my career. Me? I'd moved on with my life. Got promoted at work to senior project manager, overseeing all commercial projects over $750,000. Started dating a civil engineer named Kristen, who doesn't believe that family is a blank check to be cashed at will. Expanded my investment portfolio, and even started mentoring a couple of younger guys at work on financial literacy. Then they finally tried to reach out again. Mom sent me a message from a new number asking if we could meet. Of course I agreed. I wanted to witness it with my eyes, see how badly they screwed up. They came over, knocking on my door. My parents and Megan were standing on the porch, looking like they'd aged a decade in a year. "Thank you for seeing us," my father began. I nodded, but said nothing. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," my mother continued, "about everything that happened, about Dubai, about how we treated you." Megan was crying silently. "Trevor bailed the second things got hard. You were right about him all along." "What do you want?" I asked, cutting to the chase. I'd developed a pretty reliable bullshit detector over the past year. They exchanged glances. "We want to reconcile," my mother said. "To be a family again. We need a place to stay," my father admitted. "Just until we get back on our feet." Same phrase, different day. Part of me wondered if they even realized they were using the exact same line they'd used 4 years ago when this whole mess started. "You disowned me. We're not family anymore, remember?" My mother reached for my hand. I moved it away. "Please," she whispered. "We were hurt and angry. We didn't mean it." "No," I replied. "You meant it at the time. You meant it when you thought other people would keep supporting you. You meant it until you ran out of relatives to leech off of?" My father looked genuinely confused, like he couldn't comprehend why his apology script wasn't working. In his mind, saying sorry was always enough to reset everything. It never occurred to him that some damage can't be undone with words. "But I'm not your backup plan," I continued. "And I'm certainly not going to let you move back into my property after the damage you caused." Megan's face hardened. "This is still about your stupid trip, isn't it? We've both paid for that. I lost my career because of the charges you filed." I looked at her directly. "You lost your career because you committed identity theft. Now you know what it's like when doors close because of things on your record." After minutes of back and forths, they lost hope. As they were leaving, I stopped them. I handed my father an envelope. Inside was $3,000. "This is for your surgery," I said flatly. They stared at the envelope, then at me, a glimmer of hope in their eyes. "This isn't reconciliation," I continued. "This is closing our accounts. I won't have your health problems on my conscience. Nothing more." My father's hand trembled as he took the envelope. "Thank you, son," he muttered. "Don't call me that," I said, opening the door for them. I watched them walk to their car, heads down. On the drive home, they'd probably convince themselves this was the first step toward getting back into my life. They'd be wrong. Still waiting on that call from Trevor's lawyer, by the way. It's been 379 business days. Am I the a-hole for not taking down my video? That was a gift from my best man? I have a sister that's 6 years older than me. So, for as long as I can remember, whenever something important was happening in my life, it often got overshadowed because of something related to my sister. It was like my big moments didn't really stand a chance. For example, imagine being super excited for your basketball game, where you might be starting for the first time or hitting a game-winning shot. You look into the stands to see if your parents are cheering you on, but instead you get a last-minute text saying, "Oops, sorry, we can't make it. Your sister isn't up for going out today." And it wasn't just sports stuff. Big life moments were affected too. Like my high school graduation, a once-in-a-lifetime event. You'd think that's a no-miss event, right? Well, I was gearing up to walk across the stage, get my diploma, maybe even throw my hat in the air. But then comes the "oops, sorry" message again because my sister had a tough day at work and needed support. This pattern didn't stop as I got older. Fast forward to one of the most important days of my life, my wedding day. I had met the most amazing person, and we decided to get married. Knowing my family history, I was pretty anxious about my sister possibly causing a scene or something that would prevent my parents from attending. I talked to my parents about this fear multiple times leading up to the wedding. My mom, probably trying to keep things smooth, reassured me repeatedly, "Don't worry, we wouldn't miss it for the world. Nothing will go wrong this time." But guess what? History has a funny way of repeating itself. On the morning of my wedding, instead of waking up to a day filled with joy, I woke up to a voicemail from my mom. She was apologizing because yet again, they couldn't make it. This time, the reason was that my sister's dog was sick, and she was too upset for them to leave her alone. You can imagine how heartbroken I felt, missing my parents on one of the most significant days of my life. To top it all off, there was a bit of unexpected excitement due to a friend of mine who's known for his sense of humor and pranks. He thought it would be hilarious to play a little joke on my wedding day. Without telling me, he grabbed my phone, coordinated with my fiancée, and filmed our wedding ceremony and reception. His plan was to post this video online as a sort of live wedding gift. My fiance thought it was a cute idea and went along with it. I only found out about this whole scheme when I returned home from the celebration. It was a whirlwind of a day, filled with unexpected ups and downs, and while the video turned out to be a fun surprise that captured our special moments, the sting of my parents' absence lingered amidst the laughter and the cheers. Continuing the story from where we left off, after the wedding, despite the no-shows and surprises, we headed off to our honeymoon. We chose a peaceful lakeside cabin, a place so secluded it didn't even have cell service. This meant we were completely off the grid, unaware of anything happening back home. While we were away, the prank video my friend made started making rounds online. He had put it together with a sweet caption that highlighted how awesome he is, even though his own parents often missed his big moments, similar to how my parents had missed mine. The video itself was a montage of still photos from the wedding, shots of us with my wife's parents, me having a blast on the dance floor, and scenes of us cutting the cake. Normally, you'd see both sets of parents in these kinds of pictures, but of course, mine were missing. The soundtrack for this montage was the voicemail from my mom explaining why they couldn't make it, because my sister's dog was sick. It was a poignant contrast, the joy and celebration of the wedding day set against the backdrop of my mom's apologetic and somber message. When we returned from the honeymoon a week later, I was hit by a storm of reactions. My phone had blown up with hundreds of messages. Family members from both sides were urging me to take the video down. They told me my sister had been crying nonstop since the video went live, and that my mom was so upset she was refusing to leave the house, maybe for the whole year. This situation put me in a really tough spot. On one hand, the video was a humorous and lighthearted recap of our special day, meant to share our happiness and perhaps lightly rib the situation with my family. On the other hand, it had unintentionally caused a lot of pain and drama back home, affecting my sister and my mom deeply. Dealing with this fallout wasn't easy. I had to weigh the joy of my new marriage and the fun memories of our wedding day against the ongoing family drama that seemed to follow me even into this new chapter of my life. After returning from our honeymoon and settling into our new home with my wife, I finally checked my messages and saw all the pleas from my family to take down the wedding video. Despite the pressure, I chose to take some time before responding. I wanted to enjoy my early days of married life without getting pulled back into family drama. When I eventually got around to dealing with it, my dad reached out to me. He asked me to take the video down, explaining that the night of my wedding had just been a bad one for them, and he promised they'd make it up to us by meeting my wife, since they hadn't made it to the wedding. I was really frustrated by this point. I asked him straight up, "How do you plan to make up for missing my wedding? It's a once-in-a-lifetime event." His response was just a vague promise to make it up to me. That wasn't enough for me. I felt like they had consistently ignored my feelings about the whole situation with my sister, overshadowing my important moments. So I told him that I would only take down the video after he found a way to make up for missing my wedding. The conversation got heated, and we both ended up hanging up the phone to avoid saying things we might regret later. Looking back, I could have easily just deleted the video to avoid all this hassle, but at the moment, it felt important to stand up for myself. It was about more than just a video. It was about feeling acknowledged and valued by my family, something that had been missing for a long time. Now for the top comments. 1. Not to the a-hole. The truth hurts sometimes. And your parents and sister just got "we need your friend" is awesome. Please leave the video up. This, your friends manipulate their words. Your parents would have nothing to cry about if they hadn't done anything wrong. They skipped your wedding with one seriously pathetic excuse. Let them feel the effects of that. Your friend is the true MVP in this story. OP, keep that video up until the end of time. Your parents need to be reminded just how much they failed you and favored your sister. Your family doesn't like it. Lucky for you, you just married into a new one. 2. Not the a-hole. Not only would I leave it up, but would start a YouTube channel and add to it. You know, when you post holiday pictures with your mom speaking over it with, "Sorry, we can't make it. Says he has a pimple." Or when you post baby pictures with mom/dad saying sorry, but says he is having a bad hair day. Post links here. Facebook, Twitter. Monetize it to make a nice nest egg and enjoy your life as the free. 3. Not the a-hole. They were finally called out on their blatant favoritism, and they obviously don't take it well. I'd hold off inviting them anywhere or to anything obscene, at least for a while. Don't make them your first priority when you clearly aren't theirs. Focus on your new wife and your absolutely awesome friend. They both sound like keepers. To be honest, my parents missing my wedding because my sister's dog was sick and she was sad would probably be no contact worthy for me, especially if my sister was 6 years older than me. If she was 4 and the family pet was dying, it may be understandable. But a grown woman needing both her parents to be consoled because her dog wasn't well. Jesus' blatant golden child slash black sheep base going on their daughter gets pandered and spoiled since her birth to the point of her taking it absolutely for granted. Son gets neglected and emotionally mistreated to the point of him, knowing better than to expect anything from his parents at all. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister to adopt kids if she wants them so much? All right, let's go into more detail about the situation with my sister Hannah. She's 35 years old and had a really tough couple of years. Back in 2021, she went through a tough divorce that turned her world upside down, and she even ended up losing her house because of it. Seeing her struggle like this was hard, and since I have a stable job and a big enough house, I decided to help her out. So I invited her to live with me and my 2 daughters, who are 9 and 4 years old. The idea was for her to stay with us without paying rent, so she could save up some money and eventually find a new place of her own. Living together turned out to be pretty great for the most part. Hannah isn't just staying with us, she's become a big part of our daily lives. She helps out by paying some of the bills, something I didn't ask her to do, but she insists on contributing. She's also super sweet around the house, always ready to lend a hand with chores or whatever else needs doing. One of the best things about having Hannah with us is how much she loves my daughters, and they love her right back. Since she only works part-time, she spends a lot of time at home, which has turned out to be a big help for me. She stepped into the role of a babysitter, looking after the girls while I'm at work. This has been a huge relief for me financially because it means I don't have to pay for daycare or a nanny. However, this close-knit setup has led to a bit of an issue. I'm really happy that Hannah is so attentive and caring towards my daughters, but there are times when I feel like she's maybe getting a bit too involved. For example, she started to come along to all the school events for my eldest daughter. At first, I thought it was great that she was so supportive, but it became a problem when she began introducing my daughters as her own. This made things confusing, especially at school, where it's important for the staff to have clear information about family relationships. I had to talk to Hannah about this. I explained to her that while I appreciate how much she cares and wants to be involved, it's important to make sure that everyone understands she is their aunt, not their mom. This is to prevent any misunderstandings with the teachers and other parents, which could complicate things for my daughters. After our initial talk, things seemed to improve for a while, but then I encountered a new problem that took me by surprise. I found out from my new neighbors that they were under the impression that Hannah, my sister, was actually the mother of my kids. I was totally taken aback by this news. And then something even more upsetting happened. My youngest daughter, right in front of me, called Hannah Mom. I needed to understand what was happening, so I asked my daughter about it. Hannah tried to brush it off by saying that it's common for toddlers to randomly call women mama or men dada. But I knew something was off, because my daughter has never called anyone else mommy before. Later, while I was sitting down with my older daughter to help her with her homework, she opened up to me. She told me that her younger sister only called Hannah mommy because Hannah had asked them to do so when they were out in public. My older daughter was afraid to tell me this because she thought Hannah would get angry. Hearing this made me really upset. I confronted Hannah right away about what my older daughter had told me. Hannah's response was that I should be happy because she treats them well enough for them to see her as a second mother. This really frustrated me because it wasn't just about treating them well, it was about overstepping boundaries that shouldn't be crossed, especially without my consent. It's one thing to be a loving aunt, but it's another to encourage my children to call her mom and confuse their understanding of our family roles. This situation needed to be addressed to ensure that the boundaries were clear and respected moving forward. The situation escalated further during our conversation. Hannah argued that the girls were happy to have her as a second mom and that she simply loves kids. This comment, while perhaps meant to reassure, actually made me even more upset because it seemed to undermine my role as their actual mother. Caught up in the heat of the moment, I ended up saying something harsh. I told her that if she wanted children so much, she should consider adopting her own. This comment was particularly cutting because Hannah is unable to have children, a fact that was a painful part of her recent divorce. After our argument, I started receiving calls and messages from other family members. They were upset with me for what I said to Hannah, calling it cruel. I can't help but feel conflicted. On one hand, I understand their point and regret that my words may have hurt Hannah deeply. On the other hand, I felt it was important to express the seriousness of the situation and the impact of her actions on my children and me. This has left me in a tough spot. While I do acknowledge that my comment was hurtful and perhaps too severe, it also came from a place of frustration and a need to protect the boundaries of my relationship with my daughters. Moving forward, it's clear that Hannah and I need to have a more thorough conversation about our expectations and roles within the family. It's crucial for us to find a way to address these issues while maintaining respect and understanding for each other's feelings and limitations. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. 1. Not the a-hole. I've said it before on this sub and I'll say it again. A family member on my boyfriend's side was like this with our daughter. The end result? She called the cops on me and tried to have my daughter removed and given to her. Nip it in the bud now, because our town is acting very weird. 2. Not the a-hole, for reasons like this, though she isn't a grandparent. If you end up kicking her out, the closer your sister is to them, she could end up trying to file some demand for visitation, like a grandparent's rights suit. She has crossed a line and clearly thinks she has done absolutely nothing wrong. Get her out before she gets enmeshed enough that a court thinks it is in the best interest of the children for her to have access to them. 3. Not the a-hole, and kick her out. She told Opie's kids to keep a secret from Opie, or else should get mad at the kids, even without the secrets being. You must call me mom. That's enough reason to not want her around. Kids, yes. The secret parts freak me out big time. Incredibly worrisome. I think sister needs to see a therapist about some stuff. It's terrible that she can't conceive. Plus, adding on to divorce to her mental load might have made her crack a bit. Until then, I go low contact. At least because that behavior is crazy nasty. Not the a-hole. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for siding with my mom over my wife and telling my wife it was her fault for putting me on the spot? So here's how my wife and I usually handle things. We always support each other when we're out and about, like at parties or family gatherings. If we disagree on something, we don't argue about it right there in front of everyone. Instead, we wait until we're back at home to talk things over quietly. It's like having a team strategy where we show a united front to the world, but we can still figure things out between us in private. Now here's where a bit of a situation came up involving my mom. She lives really far away, a whole 8-hour flight from where my wife and I live. So, whenever she plans a visit, she doesn't just come for a weekend. She stays for around 4 to 5 days because it makes more sense after traveling so far. But here's the important part. My mom is the one who chose to move away from us a while back. When she did, my wife was very clear with her. She explained that since my mom made the decision to move, doesn't have young children to take care of, and has a job that lets her choose her hours, she should be the one who comes to visit us. My wife also mentioned that even though we love having her, we're not going to completely change our normal lives during her visits. We've got limited vacation time and we really want to save that for special trips or fun activities with our kids. So we made it clear we can't take time off just to entertain my mom when she visits. At first, this felt a bit strange to me, but I knew it made sense, so I agreed with my wife. The last time my mom visited, which was 3 years ago, we stuck to our usual routine. We both went to work every day, and my mom stayed at our house. Since she was alone most of the day, by the time we came back in the evening, she was super restless. It seemed like she was getting really bored and frustrated with being on her own so much. During my mom's last visit, we pretty much stuck to our regular daily routine. We did all the usual stuff around the house. My wife was really helpful and took over some of my chores so I could spend a bit more time with my mom. We had our typical dinners like we do on any normal weeknight. But despite this, by the end of her visit, it was pretty obvious that my mom was not having a good time. She was exhausted, unhappy, and for some reason, she wasn't eating much at all. She seemed really upset but didn't say anything about it, though you could tell she was annoyed. Then, the whole world got hit with COVID, and that made everything more complicated. Because of the pandemic, we all got super busy and just couldn't visit each other. Recently, we tried to mend things a bit by inviting her to come over again, but my mom flat out refused. She told us that her last trip felt like torture because we didn't really take time to host her properly. She said if we weren't going to make an effort, she'd rather not visit. I thought she had a point because she never really asked for much. She just chose not to put herself in that situation again. However, this really upset my wife. She wanted me to call my mom out for acting entitled. I didn't think that was the right move, so I didn't. But my wife went ahead and called my mom anyway, accusing her of being childish and needing constant attention. This blew up into a big argument where my mom shouted that we were terrible hosts, and she was so bored during her last visit that she actually cried one day. It was a messy situation, and it just showed how tough it can be to balance everyone's expectations and feelings. We were trying to keep our lives as normal as possible, but maybe we didn't consider enough how my mom felt being on her own so much. It's tricky, and it seems like we all have different views on how these visits should go. My mom made it pretty clear that she doesn't want to keep visiting us if things don't change because she doesn't feel super welcome. She's okay with us visiting her, though, so she's kind of left the door open for us to come over anytime we want. Then, things got a bit heated between my wife and my mom. My wife asked me if I was going to step in and do something about how my mom and she were getting along. My mom felt that my wife was being too harsh on her and wanted me to help calm things down. This put me in a really tough spot because my wife then asked me to pick a side, hers or my mom's. I ended up saying I was on my mom's side, and this caused a big reaction. My mom started laughing, maybe because she felt relieved or supported, but it wasn't a good moment for my wife. She got really upset, started crying, and then she hung up the phone. Now she feels like I've betrayed her, and she's pretty hurt. She even called me a mama's boy, which stung because I haven't actually seen my mom in 3 years. I tried to explain to my wife that it wasn't fair for her to make me choose sides like that suddenly. I also said that my mom has a right to decide not to visit if she feels like it's always a big hassle or if she's not feeling welcome. This whole situation is tricky because it feels like no matter what I say, someone I care about ends up feeling bad. We're kind of stuck trying to figure out how to make everyone feel okay without causing more arguments. It's like trying to keep all your friends happy at once. Someone always ends up feeling left out or upset, and it's really hard to make it right again. Now for the comments, if you want to plan things and host your mom with activities and great meals, what is stopping you? It seems to me like your wife doesn't want to be expected to drop all her responsibilities to plan, prepare, and be the host, a role that women have been conditioned to take automatically. I would also guess that your wife may feel daunted by what hosting usually means for her personal time off. Sure, but also planning activities, reservations at meals, cleaning and setting up guest room cooking/grocery shopping, ensuring the kids have the right balance of grandparent time, educational time, downtime, etc. That's stressful. If you want your mom to come have a conversation with your wife about how to ensure you can be welcoming and gracious hosts without overburdening your wife, meaning you take on more of these responsibilities because it's your mom, his wife. She runs Opie's life. We will never take the kids to visit your mother. We won't be taking any PTO during your mother's visits. We won't in any way alter our daily routines and will behave as if your mother wasn't here. Now that your mother has feelings have been hurt by my design, I will yell at her for having those feelings and taking steps to avoid a repeat. I will rub salt in the wound by instructing you to tell her that you agree with me. And I do now. I think there's more to the story. Clearly, the wife and mother-in-law don't have a good relationship, so there must be background as to why wife is being like this. If my mother-in-law moved away, I'd likely have the same restrictions in place. I'm not very confrontational, so it may not come across the same way, etc. But my mother-in-law is awful to me. She doesn't respect my boundaries. Erdogan's upset for my daughter. She has made racist comments about my appearance for years, and that's not something I'm comfortable existing about on a frequent basis. I'm also not going to go out of my way to go visit someone who makes me uncomfortable and feels then, I think the situation was handled poorly, and that there wasn't one particular person that's at fault here. But Opie is definitely an asshole. All of his mother's complaints are ones he could have solved if he wanted to, rather than shift the blame onto his wife. Everyone sucks here. Your mom navigated airports and getting to you. Is she incapable of renting a car using one of yours? Your mom was starving because she expected someone to shop and cook for her. She's acting super entitled, and that her visit required everyone to drop what they were doing for her. Sounds like she is high maintenance. And your wife had her number even before your mom moved away. I won't say your wife saying that you couldn't take time off when your mom visited was wrong. Maybe you don't take your 4-week off as PTA was precious, but a couple of days would have been inappropriate. She also was foolish to call your mom and argue with her instead of just leaving it alone. You are the a-hole because you denigrated your wife in front of your mother. Plus, not helping your mom have a better trip the first time around. We'll talk about all this later. Or let's end this call and speak again another time. Or a zillion other non-committal answers were better than saying I'm on my mom's side. I'd go to counseling with your wife if I were you. Both of you have stuff to apologize for, but your mother is the biggest. They home? She's driving a wedge in and she knows it. And you fell for it. Last story. Am I the a-hole for being strict with one daughter and lenient with the other I-44? A female and a mother to 2 wonderful girls? So, my daughters Claire and Lucy, who are like 2 sides of a coin, each unique in their own ways. I'll call them Claire, who is 16, and Lucy, who is 15, just to keep things private. I care about them both a lot, but I don't treat them the same because they like different things and are good at different stuff. Claire, for example, struggles with schoolwork. She often gets low grades and finds it hard to stay focused. At first, we thought maybe she had ADHD, but it turned out that school just isn't her thing. That's totally okay. Not everyone is made for academic stuff. Lucy, on the other hand, is a star in school. She's always at the top of her class, pulling in perfect grades and a 4.0 GPA. Because she's doing so well, we've decided to do things a bit differently with her. We think she might end up going to a top university, so we're helping her make the most of her talents. For Lucy, that means lots of extra learning. We signed her up for a special math and robotics camp and even have her start on homework for next year to keep her ahead. She's also involved in lots of activities outside school and competes in academic competitions. Since her schedule is so packed, we let her have more time on the computer to study and do her schoolwork. Claire has different plans. She's thinking about going to a trade school instead of university, which fits better with what she's interested in. We support her choice and let her spend more time hanging out with her friends, giving her the freedom to enjoy her teen years in her own way. So, while it might seem like we're treating them differently, it's all about helping each of them in the best way possible, according to what they need and what they're good at. We live in the Bay Area, so it is very competitive to go to university here, which is why we are pushing her so much. We know she will thank us later in life that we have given her a good environment to encourage her intellect. The problem is that Lucy and I got into a fight where she asked me why Claire is allowed to go out and do academic things, and I replied that the reason is because they don't have the same ambitions. Lucy got mad and told me I was favoring Claire over her, to which I replied that was not true. Truth be told, I love both of them equally. I want the best for both of them. But realistically, if Lucy doesn't spend her time preparing college apps, doing extracurriculars, and using her intellect, she's wasting it. While Claire doesn't need to spend as much time on her future, as there is much less uncertainty, I feel bad. And while I know I'm doing the right thing at a core, I feel like there might be something wrong with the way we have approached Lucy's education. Am I the a-hole? Edit. People are accusing me of abandoning Claire. Claire knows and agrees with this arrangement, as I have looked into options for community college or trade school with her. Her GPA is not good enough for any university and she knows it. I'm in no way insulting her. She is very much aware of her situation. She's very pragmatic and responsible. Now for the comments. No giving up on one daughter while micromanaging and pushing another is not treating them fairly. It is fine to treat your children differently as long as you treat them fairly. But you are not doing that. Your home putting all your expectations in one child while giving up on the other is terrible parenting. Opie. I was ready to say not the whole if you were pushing Claire to try and achieve more, but you already home a major one at that. Lucy is doing well in school, but you putting extra rates of academic responsibilities on her is going to result in her rebelling. It's better to give her some freedoms. Sit with her and discuss with her what her academic goals are. If they are to get into a top university like Harvard, then yes, tell her she will need to focus more on her schoolwork. But if she's hoping to get into another university, regardless of what the workload she's going to need for that, is an ask if she's willing to right now put that effort in. Lucy needs to be a part of this conversation, and of how much time she's dedicating through schoolwork. Otherwise, she won't be able to fully understand its value, and she will lose motivation, and her intellect will seem like a burden to her rather than a gift. Universities also like to look at people who have life experience focusing on school and extracurricular. It doesn't always pay off. Also, don't lose sides of her personal mental health. I, 43 male, recently found myself entangled in a tumultuous family drama that has left me questioning the very fabric of trust and loyalty in my family. My dad, whom I have considered a mentor and business partner for over a decade, dropped a bombshell that shattered my world. To provide some context, my dad, 65 male, is a heavy diesel mechanic and has run a small workshop his whole life. I've always been interested in his work since I was a kid and would always help him out on the weekends. I went to college to get my qualifications in automobile engineering so I could get a degree and officially help my dad out. Since I was 23, I have worked with my dad as a mechanic IC and slowly taken over his workshop. When I started, he had only 2 mechanics who worked for him part-time and 1 car. With my knowledge and experience, I introduced several new strategies, and we have grown to over 35 employees and 15 cars in the last 10 years. We went from $250,000 in revenue to just shy of $7 million this financial year. My dad only works in the workshop while I am for 20/80 workshop to office split. I have dedicated the last 10 years of my life to building the family business from the ground up. The blood, sweat, and tears I poured into it were not merely for personal gain, but with the understanding that one day I would inherit the fruits of my labor. The business became my baby, and I navigated the challenges, weather, the storms, and celebrated the victories with unwavering commitment. I have an older brother, Jerry, 39 male, who went to university and then worked in the city as an accountant. He has never been interested in my dad's business. Growing up, he hated the fact that our dad was a mechanic. He used to feel embarrassed about it and refused to acknowledge it in front of our friends. When I used to help out my dad, my brother would shout at me and tell me that this work was beneath us. even when I expressed my love for automobiles and ultimately went on to pursue the degree. My brother discouraged me several times, telling me that this degree would get me nowhere and I should find a better career to pursue. Despite his embarrassment, my dad always considered my brother to be his golden child. You see, it wasn't always like this before. My dad used to be equally loving to both of us, but when Jerry was 15 years old, he got pneumonia and was buried in. The doctors were really concerned with his health and warned us that he might be dangerously close to death. This was an extremely tough time for our entire family. I remember feeling so scared about losing my brother throughout the entire hospital stay. Jerry always wanted our dad above anyone else. He used to ask for our dad all the time. My dad spent countless nights in the hospital, which meant they bonded a lot. Eventually, Jerry recovered, and things went back to normal. Yet my dad continued to favor Jerry over the years. Even when Jerry would grow up to hate our dad's profession, Dad didn't mind and favored him regardless. As I got older, I obviously noticed this favoritism and was understandably hurt. That our father always favored Jerry. For example, once my school had an awards ceremony where I was going to be presented an award, I was extremely proud that I won the award and told my parents about it. My mother hugged me while my dad smiled warmly, congratulating me. I told my parents how the school had invited parents to be there for our award ceremony. I knew my mother might not be able to come as she worked long night shifts in the hospital, which meant she was always tired throughout the day. So I looked at my dad curiously, expecting him to say that he would be there. My dad looked at me hesitantly, glancing at my mother, who asked him if he could be there for me during the award ceremony. My dad then cleared his throat and said that he had plans to play basketball with Jerry. My mother looked at him angrily and told him that playing basketball with Jerry wasn't important, and he could take Jerry with him to attend my award ceremony instead. My dad nodded, begrudgingly in agreement. The night before the event, my mother reminded my dad during dinner to make sure he showed up at my awards ceremony. Jerry, who was sitting at the dinner table, asked my dad if he was canceling on him for that basketball practice. My dad explained to him that they could always play basketball the next week. Jerry immediately started expressing his discontentment, saying how he was looking forward to having a father-son time and didn't want to waste his time from my ceremony. My mother retorted back to him that as my big brother, he should be more understanding and supportive as I had won an award. She went on to say that my dad needed to be there for me this one time. On the day of the event, I reminded my dad again before I left for school to make sure he showed up. He told me not to worry about it and that he would be there during my awards ceremony. I looked around for my dad everywhere, but I couldn't find him. My name was eventually called up and I had to go up to the stage to collect my award. I remember receiving my award from the principal while my schoolmates cheered, and I was fervently looking for my dad's face in the crowd. He never showed up. I sent my mother a message saying that my dad never showed up. She immediately called me, concerned, asking me if I was sure that my dad didn't show up, and I told her how he wasn't anywhere to be found. And maybe he must have forgotten. My mother told me that was impossible, as she had put 5 alarms on his phone and she couldn't see his car parked in front of our house, which meant he was definitely out. At this point, we were alarmed and felt concerned, thinking maybe something had happened to him. When I reached home after school, I opened the door to see my mom and dad having a huge argument. They were shouting at each other at the top of their voices. The air was thick with tension, and the heated exchange between my parents echoed through the hallway. My mother, her face contorted with anger, stood near the entrance while my dad, looking both guilty and defensive, was attempting to justify his actions. Feeling a mixture of confusion and concern, I cautiously stepped into our living room. I asked my dad curiously if he was okay, my worry palpable. As I mentioned that he never showed up at my school for the award ceremony, the room fell silent for the moment while my dad tried to avoid eye contact and mumbled an apology. Something about losing track of time and unforeseen circumstances. I could sense that his explanation wasn't adding up, but before I could press further, my mother unleashed a torrent of frustration and disappointment. "Why did you show up, John?" she demanded, her voice sharp and accusatory. "Tell me the truth. Our son won an award, and you promised him you would be there. What could be more important than that?" Dad shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware that he was in the hot seat before he could respond. Jerry entered the room with an air of nonchalance, eating an ice cream. My mother turned her ire towards Jerry, her eyes narrowing in disbelief and anger. "And what's your role in all of this, Jerry? Where were you and your dad? And why didn't you support your brother in his big day?" Jerry, with a shrug that exuded indifference, muttered something about how he had suddenly craved ice cream and had asked our dad to drive him to the ice cream shop first. Later, when they drove to my school, they were informed that they had missed the award ceremony, so they drove back home. My mother's face turned from anger to incredulity as she processed this absurd excuse. You skipped your brother's award ceremony for ice cream, she exclaimed, her voice rising incredulously. You and your father missed his big moment because you wanted ice cream. Amidst the escalating tension, my dad, instead of apologizing and admitting his mistake, tried to defend Jerry and justify his actions, stammering out an explanation that only added fuel to the fire. Look, it's not a big deal, he began, attempting to downplay the significance of my award ceremony. It's just an awkward ceremony, and there will be more in the future. Jerry wanted an ice cream, and I thought we could just grab a quick one. I didn't think it was such a big deal. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own father, the person I had expected to be there to share in my joy, was diminishing the significance of my achievement. The dismissive tone and the casual brushing aside of a moment I had been looking forward to left me speechless as his words hung in the air. My initial shock turned into a potent mix of frustration and sadness. A lump formed in my throat, and I felt the sting of unshared tears. My achievement, the recognition for my hard work and dedication, was being swept aside as inconsequential. But that moment, I realized that it wasn't just about missing the ceremony. It was about the lack of understanding, the absence of support, and the crushing feeling that my accomplishments were not valued by those I held closest. I looked at my dad, the one who was supposed to be a source of encouragement, with a mix of disbelief and betrayal, my eyes mirroring the profound disappointment I felt in my heart. My mother continued to express her disappointment, scolding them both for prioritizing an impromptu ice cream craving over a significant milestone in my life. As their argument raged on, I continued to feel a sense of betrayal and hurt, feeling a heavy weight on my chest and a lump in my throat. I mustered a weak smile and told my dad, "It's okay, Dad, don't worry about it." The words tasted better on my tongue, forced out to mask the deeper emotions swirling within me. I didn't want to escalate the argument or add more strain to the already tense atmosphere. As I retreated to my room, the facade I had maintained for my dad crumbled. The door closed behind me, shutting out the outside world, and I allowed the floodgates to open. The tears held back in front of my parents streamed down my face. The weight of the disappointment, the hurt, the profound sense of being let down overwhelmed me. My mom, seeing me upset, came into my room to comfort me. She sat beside me, putting her arm around my shoulder. She didn't say much, just let me cry and vent my feelings. Her presence was reassuring, and I felt a bit better knowing she was there for me. After a while, she spoke gently. "I know it hurts, sweetheart. Your dad messed up, and I'm sorry you had to go through this. Sometimes people make mistakes, but it doesn't take away from your achievement. You work hard for that award, and nothing can change that." Her words were like a warm hug for my soul, and I began to feel a little lighter. She stayed with me until I calmed down, assuring me that despite the disappointment, I was still valued, that I loved. There are so many instances where my dad has shown clear favoritism towards my brother over me. My mother has had several conversations with him regarding this. My dad always listens and makes an effort to be more involved with me, but it never lasts long. And he ultimately goes back to being super dad to Jerry. It's like a pattern that I've noticed throughout my life. Despite these moments of partiality, I have always tried hard to win my dad's approval. I have a genuine interest in his work, and in particular developed a deep love for cars, partly because it seemed like something he valued, even though it often felt like a one-sided effort. I kept hoping that my efforts would eventually make a difference and earn me the recognition and approval I crave from my dad. Last year, my dad filed for divorce with my mother, citing irreconcilable differences, marking the beginning of a challenging chapter in our family's life. I knew for a few years that the arguments between my mother and my dad had become worse and worse, but I'd never imagined that they would be divorcing. It was a difficult time for us as a family. My dad has since gone on to date several young women. 5 months ago, my dad called me and my brother for an important dinner. We sat down at the dinner table, and my brother Jerry and I, as our dad, prepared to drop some unexpected news on us. The atmosphere in the room was tense, and I couldn't help but feel a knot in my stomach. Anticipating what was coming next with a serious expression, my dad finally spoke. "I have something important to share with you both. Gina and I got married." He looked at us as if expecting us to be overjoyed, or at least accepting of his decision. Jerry and I exchanged stunned glances. Gina, his latest girlfriend, was only 30 years old, just a few years younger than me. The shock on our faces must have been evident. But my dad continued, seemingly oblivious to our surprise. He went on to explain how he had found love again and how Gina brought joy and excitement into his life. I couldn't believe that my dad had decided to get married without even inviting us to his wedding or discussing it with us. My dad didn't just stop with that announcement and went on to say how proud he was of the business he had created and grown over the years. He said how he's been thinking lately about the succession plan of his business. I waited with bated breath for him to share his plans. My dad turned to look at me and told me that he had fought long and hard about this and decided that since I wasn't married yet and had no children of my own, I should forget about inheriting the family business from him. I looked at him confused as he went on to say that he had decided to hand over the entire business to my brother. Shock and disbelief washed over me as I grappled with the weight of this unexpected betrayal. It was a sucker punch to the gut, and the trust I had in my father began to crumble. Fury and betrayal bubbled within me as my dad dropped this bombshell. My entire world, built over a decade of hard work and dedication, was crumbling before my eyes. I stared at him, my jaw tight, unable to comprehend the magnitude of his decision. Why I finally managed to utter the word saving with a mix of anger and hurt. I dedicated my life to this business. I built it with you. How can you just hand it over to Jerry? Dad, seemingly unfazed by the storm he had unleashed, explained his reasoning. Jerry has a family, a wife, and kids. He needs the financial stability, and I believe he can take the business to new heights. His words hung in the air, and I felt the weight of his favoritism crashing down on me once again. I struggled to keep my composure, my hands clenched into fists that this isn't fair. I've given everything to this business. I've worked alongside you and dedicated my time and energy. And now you're just going to cast me aside because Jerry has a family. What about my future? My dreams? His response was callous. You can continue to remain in your position and work under Jerry, but the business goes to your brother. That's my final decision. Anger surged through me, but I beat back my retort. I turned to Jerry, hoping for some support, a shred of empathy. Instead, he remained silent, avoiding my gaze. The disappointment I felt extended beyond my father. It now encompassed my brother, who chose not to stand by me. At that moment, I felt the weight of a lifetime of favoritism crashing down on me. It wasn't just about the business. It was a culmination of years of feeling second best. The sacrifice I made, the dedication I showed, all dismissed with a casual wave, resigned. I muttered a defeated "Fine, Dad, if that's what you want." I turned away, the bitter taste of betrayal lingering in the air. I decided to walk out of his house without fighting with him any further. I couldn't shake the feeling of abandonment, the realization that my dad continued to favor his golden child despite how hard I had worked over him. Later, in the solitude of my home, the weight of the injustice pressed down on me. The business I considered, my legacy, my life's work was slipping through my fingers. Anguish welled up, and the room blurred as tears blurred my vision. I had never felt so alone, so discarded. I decided to call up my mom, hoping that she would understand what I was going through. I told her everything that happened, how my dad favored my brother, how he took away the business from me, and how lost I felt. She was surprised and upset as I shared the details. I never thought he'd do something like this, my mother said quietly, sounding sad to treat your brother so much better and give him the business completely instead of dividing the business equally between the both of you is completely unfair. Her words matched exactly how I felt, as I didn't mind sharing the business with my brother, but my dad had unfairly given it to him completely. Despite how hard I had worked over the years, as we kept talking, my mom's voice went from surprised to determined. She told me firmly to try not to see this as the end, but as a chance for something new. You've done amazing things, and you don't need his approval. Why don't you start your own business? You know, a lot of clients would rather work with you than your brother, she said through her words. A flicker of determination ignited within me. If my dad fought, he could strip away everything I had worked for. He was mistaken. The pain of betrayal fueled a silent vow. I would forge my own path and build something new from the ashes of what was taken from me. In the last 10 years, I have saved more than enough money for me to start my own business. The next day, as the reality of the situation settled in, I took decisive action. I reached out to more than half of the clients we had amassed over the years, mainly after the ones I had recruited over the years. These clients were the ones I had built relationships with, and earned their trust. I told them about my dad's plan to give the entire business to my older brother, hence how I had decided to start my own company. The clients were as shocked as me, but surprisingly, the overall response was overwhelmingly positive. These were people who had come to admire my dedication, work ethic, and the values that I brought to the table. They assured me that they were willing to follow me to continue our successful partnership under a new banner. The news of my departure from the family business spread throughout the industry, and some of my dad's workers even approached me voicing their support that they wanted to work for me. It was like people were starting to understand that after my dad left the business under my brother's care, this would be a sinking ship. I handed in my resignation letter to my dad, and he was shocked. He scolded me that I should not ditch the company as such a crucial period, but I scoffed at his response and left. As the majority of the client base shifted allegiance, the once thriving family business began to crumble. Dad, caught in the crossfire of the fallout, watched helplessly as his grand plan backfired spectacularly. Over the months, my new endeavor has flourished. The support from loyal clients, coupled with my expertise, allow me to not only survive, but thrive. My dad's betrayal spurred me to rise from the ashes stronger and more resilient. The business I have built now, independent and thriving, is a testament to my tenacity. I can finally revel in the last laugh, knowing that my hard work, dedication, and resilience have prevailed against all odds. Meanwhile, I have learned from my mother that Jerry has no idea how to manage the business and is struggling to retain the remaining clients. I guess word of my success must have reached my dad because he sent me a long message yesterday saying I was an asshole for not helping my brother and keeping the family business alive, and how I had turned my back on family. He wrote how he was facing money issues, and his new wife threatened to divorce him because he was unable to fund her lifestyle anymore. He ended the message by saying that he expected me to do the right thing by returning to the family business and bringing back all the clients I had so that I could keep our family business afloat. Update 1. Thank you for everyone's great advice and reassurance regarding my situation. To clarify a few things, I have no idea why my dad thought it would be a good idea for my brother to take on the business when we all knew that he had absolutely no idea about the family business. Jerry agreed to my father's wishes because he knew how well our business was doing and thought this would be an easy job, with me taking most of the responsibility. He had expressed previously to us that he was unhappy at his job. Hence, I am assuming that he thought I would do most of the hard work for him, while he and his family would be able to enjoy the CEO title. As for those wondering why I'm not married yet, it's simply because I've always been a bit of a loner all my life, dedicated to my work. While I do have a girlfriend for the past 1.5 years whom I love dearly, and we have discussed marriage as a future goal, we both agree that we want to take some time to grow as individuals before taking the next step. Regardless of my marital status, I never expected my dad to give me the entire business. In fact, I would have been okay with a 7,050 split or even a 5,050 split between me and my brother, which would have been fair if I didn't have any children in the future. My share of the company would have gone to my brother's kids eventually. Anyway, so there was no reason for my dad to be so mean and give the entire business to my brother. I did spend 10 years in this business, and I deserve to have a share in it. I also never forced any of the clients to choose me over my dad's business. They opted to work with me because I was always the one who would go the extra mile, ensuring their satisfaction and building lasting relationships. I never wanted my brother to fail, or our family business to be destroyed. The business failed because my brother still didn't know the ins and outs of the business, and my dad was too busy with his new wife to focus on his clients. My dad must have assumed that I would eventually give up my business and come running back to him, asking for his forgiveness when I inevitably fail. But thanks to my hard work, I am not only standing firm, but thriving. It's disheartening to witness the downfall of a business I helped build, but it's a consequence of their own actions, not my intention. I plan on having a talk with my dad next week regarding this when I have some free time. Update 2. I finally had a talk with my dad. He called me over for dinner last weekend. Expecting an apology? I went to his place. I answered his place, and to my shock, saw my brother Jerry sitting there waiting for me. The atmosphere was tense, but I hoped they had called me here for a resolution. My dad took a deep breath, exchanging a glance with Jerry, before dropping the bombshell. He started by saying how he was sad over what had happened between us, and he regrets that our family business was now in pieces. I raised an eyebrow, bracing myself for what was to come, expecting him to say that he had changed his mind. Instead, my dad started pressuring me to return to the family business as soon as possible, claiming he would forgive and forget if I did come back. Jerry joined in, blaming me for the business's struggles and calling me selfish for leaving him all alone to manage the business. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Dad, you handed the entire business to Jerry without even bothering about my future. How is this my fault? I retorted, frustration bubbling within me. Jerry scoffed. You took most of the clients with you when you left. That's the problem. They followed me because of the relationships I built, not because I forced them. You were welcome to try to get them back. If you were so good with retaining clients, your remaining clients would have not left the business either. I argued, feeling the weight of their accusations. My dad sighed. Look, I don't want to see the family business fall apart. It's my source of income, and it's how I sustain my lifestyle. Gina has also left me because of all of this. I want to enjoy my retired life in peace, instead of trying to resolve this ongoing family drama. So stop being so selfish and just come back and work for your brother. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I realized this wasn't the apology or resolution I expected. It was an attempt to force me back into a situation I worked hard to escape. Stunned and hurt, I stood up and looked at my dad angrily. I'm done with this conversation. I will gladly watch your business go down the drain, I declared, walking away from the toxic conversation. Ever since this conversation, I have been bombarded with texts and calls from both Jerry and Dad. They've been calling me names and blaming me for everything. It's emotionally traumatizing to see how my own family wants to take advantage of my hard work, and I have blocked them for now. Update 3. Hey there. It's been a whole 6 months since I last gave you an update on what's going on in my life, and I've got some pretty exciting news to share. First off, my business is not just surviving, it's actually thriving. It's been a wild ride, but seeing my efforts pay off has been incredibly rewarding. Plus, there's something even more exciting on the horizon. I'm planning to propose to my girlfriend soon. She's absolutely amazing, and I just know she's the one for me. I can hardly wait to pop the question and hopefully start our journey towards a happy and fulfilling marriage together. On a more challenging note, things haven't been going so well for my dad. My brother, unfortunately, managed to run Dad's business into the ground. What was once a thriving company had to be sold to another business because it was just not sustainable anymore. The whole situation was pretty tough on my dad, especially because he didn't really come out of it with much to show for all his years of hard work. To make matters worse, during his divorce, his new wife ended up claiming a big chunk of what little he had left from the sale. It was a real mess, and it's been tough to watch him go through all that. Because of all the drama, I've made the decision to keep my distance from both my dad and my brother. I still hear about what's going on with them through some family friends. These friends are great. They keep me in the loop without making me dive back into the family drama. And here's something you might not expect. My relationship with my mom has actually gotten stronger during all this chaos. She's been super supportive and understanding about the decisions I've had to make. She treats me and my brother equally, despite everything that's happened, and she's been an incredible support as I navigate running my new business. She even shared that my brother is thinking about going back to his roots in accounting, now that his attempt at running a business didn't work out. Despite the challenges with my dad and brother, I'm genuinely grateful for the joys and stability in my life right now. My girlfriend has been my rock through everything, and her support means the world to me. Also, having my mom in my corner, understanding and backing my choices, has been a huge relief. It's not always easy to feel balanced when there's so much going on, but I'm focused on the positive aspects and the things I can control. I'm more determined than ever to succeed in my business endeavors. Facing these family challenges has only made me stronger and more resilient. I'm committed to turning every obstacle into an opportunity for growth and success. Looking ahead, I'm optimistic about the future and ready to tackle whatever comes my way with a positive mindset and a clear focus on my goals. Here's to moving forward, staying positive, and making the most of every opportunity. I came home on my 23rd birthday with a grocery store cake. Mom said, "No celebration this year. Your sister needs our full attention." So I packed my bags that night and disappeared. Years later, I'm a millionaire and they're all begging for scraps. Sup Reddit. My family canceled my birthday to coddle my manipulative sister. So I left with nothing and built an empire. What followed was the sweetest revenge I never planned. Here's how it went down. Picture this. I'm 23 years old, walking through the front door after an 8-hour shift at the hardware store, holding a chocolate cake I bought myself from the grocery store bakery. Cost me $6. Had happy birthday written in blue frosting that was already smearing from the heat. It wasn't much, but it was mine. My parents, Patricia and Dennis, were sitting in the living room with my sister Haley, like some kind of intervention setup. The second I walked in, my mom looked up with this expression, not quite pity, more like practiced disappointment, and delivered the news. "Blake, we've decided there won't be any birthday celebration this year. Haley's been feeling overshadowed lately and needs the family's full attention right now. You understand." Not a question, a statement. Like my feelings on the matter were irrelevant background noise. Haley sat on the worn leather couch looking appropriately distressed, fake tears already forming in her eyes. That's when something clicked in my brain. This wasn't just another instance of me being invisible in my own family. This was the final straw in a lifetime of being erased. I set the cake down on the coffee table without a word, walked straight to my room, and started packing everything I owned. The suffocating weight of that moment made perfect sense when I thought about the previous 20 years of my life. Let me back up and explain the family dynamic that created this disaster. Haley is 2 years younger than me. When she was 8, she won some junior beauty pageant, one of those small regional competitions that desperate parents convince themselves matter. I remember that day clearly, because it was the last time my parents looked at me with genuine pride. Right before they handed Haley that cheap plastic trophy, everything changed. From that moment forward, every family event, every saved dollar, every ounce of parental attention got redirected toward Haley's endless pageants, dance classes, voice lessons, and acting coaches. The house transformed into a shrine to her mediocre talents. My straight-A report cards got brief nods, while Haley's participation ribbons got framed and mounted on every available wall. When I got accepted to the state science fair with a project I'd spent months developing, my achievement vanished beneath the excitement of Haley's next competition. I learned to celebrate my victories alone in my room, while the living room became Haley's personal stage. Dad started working overtime at the factory to pay for Haley's expensive competition dresses and travel costs. He'd come home looking destroyed, eat dinner in silence, then sit through hours of Haley practicing her routines. I watched him age a decade in 3 years. His shoulders permanently slumped from the weight of financial pressure and emotional exhaustion. The only person who saw through this madness was my grandfather Walter, Dad's estranged father who lived across town. The family rarely talked about Walter because he and Mom had some ancient feud about him not supporting Haley's pageant dreams financially. Smart man. But Walter would secretly meet me at the library or park, bringing sandwiches and actually listening when I talked about school, my part-time job at the hardware store, my college plans. He was the one who celebrated when I got accepted to state college with a partial scholarship. He even opened a small college fund for me without telling anyone, making deposits whenever he could. What made that birthday night even worse was what I'd overheard 3 hours earlier. I'd come home early from my shift and heard Haley on the phone in her room. Her door was cracked open, and her voice had that fake sweetness she used when spinning lies to her friends. "Yeah, I already told Mom that I need extra attention right now," Haley said, giggling. "I mean, Blake's birthday is tomorrow, but who cares? I told them I've been feeling really depressed and overlooked. Mom bought it completely. She's going to tell him tonight that we're not celebrating because I need family support." I stood frozen in the hallway as she continued. "The best part is that nobody knows I flunked out of college 3 weeks ago. That dismissal letter from the registrar is going to arrive any day now. But by then I'll have convinced them that I dropped out because I was too stressed from the family focusing on Blake instead of me. Can you believe he still lives here at 23? What a loser." She laughed, that cruel little sound I'd heard 1,000 times before. "I already have Mom convinced that we need to spend Blake's birthday talking about my feelings and my future. By the time that letter arrives, they'll be so worried about my mental health that they won't even care about the $40,000 they wasted on my tuition. $40,000. They told me they couldn't help with my college expenses because money was tight, but they'd spent 40 grand on Haley's education that she'd just thrown away. I felt something break inside me in that moment. Something that had been cracking for years finally shattered completely. So when I walked in 3 hours later with that pathetic store-bought cake and saw them all sitting there, ready to cancel my birthday for Haley's manufactured crisis, I knew exactly what was happening. Haley had orchestrated this whole thing to deflect from her academic failure. She was using my birthday as a distraction, turning herself into the victim before the truth could come out. Mom sat forward on the couch, hands folded in that practiced way she had when delivering what she thought was motherly wisdom. "Blake, you need to understand that Haley is going through a very difficult time right now. She's been feeling like the family doesn't appreciate her enough, and we need to show her that she's our priority. Your birthday happens every year, but Haley's emotional well-being is fragile. We need to come together as a family and support her. That means no celebration, no cake, no presents. We're going to spend the evening talking about Haley's feelings and how we can better support her dreams." I looked at Dad, hoping for some sign of resistance, some flicker of awareness that this was wrong. But Dennis just stared at his hands, defeated as always. He'd given up fighting years ago, choosing survival over confrontation. Haley finally spoke, her voice trembling with fake emotion. "I'm sorry, Blake. I know this is hard for you, but I just feel so invisible sometimes. Like nobody sees how much I'm struggling. I need to know that this family cares about me, that I'm not just forgotten." Forgotten. She actually said that word. The girl whose face covered every wall, whose trophies filled every shelf, whose needs determined every family decision, she felt forgotten. Meanwhile, I'd been sleeping in the same tiny bedroom since I was 5, because Haley needed the bigger room for her pageant costumes. I'd been wearing the same 3 pairs of jeans for 2 years because Haley needed new outfits for Instagram photos. I'd been forgotten so thoroughly that most extended family members couldn't even remember what I was studying in college. That's when I made my decision. No announcement, no dramatic confrontation, no begging for recognition. I simply set that sad little cake on the coffee table, looked at each of them one last time, and walked to my room. They probably thought I was going to sulk like I had so many times before. They had no idea I was about to disappear from their lives completely. I moved through my room with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning this escape subconsciously for years. Every drawer got emptied, every important document gathered, every piece of clothing I actually cared about folded into 2 large duffel bags and a backpack. The room looked strange as I packed, like it was finally revealing what it had always been, a temporary stop rather than a home. My entire life fit into 3 bags. That's what 23 years in this house amounted to. 3 bags and a college acceptance letter. I heard footsteps in the hallway around midnight. Dad knocked softly on my door. "Blake, can I come in?" I opened the door. He stood there looking older than his 48 years. Shoulders hunched, eyes tired. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd come to his senses. Maybe he was finally going to stand up for me. Instead, he pulled out his wallet and handed me 5 crumpled $100 bills. "This is all I have right now," he said quietly. "I know things aren't fair. I know we've failed you. But I don't know how to fix it anymore. Your mother, Haley, I just don't have any fight left. I took the money. Not because I thought it made things right, but because I knew I'd need it. $500 was more than he'd ever given me for anything. The fact that it came with an apology for my entire childhood somehow made it worse. "Thanks," I said flatly. "Where will you go?" "Does it matter?" He looked like I'd slapped him, but he didn't argue, just nodded and walked away, shoulders somehow more slumped than before. I left at 2 a.m. while everyone was asleep, threw my bags in my beat-up Honda Civic that had 187,000 miles on it, and drove to the one place I knew I'd be welcome, Grandpa Walter's small house across town. Walter opened the door in his bathrobe, took one look at my bags and my face, and just stepped aside to let me in without questions. That's the thing about Walter. He didn't need explanations. He understood instantly. "Birthday went well, I take it," he said dryly, heading to the kitchen to make hot chocolate. I told him everything. The conversation I'd overheard, the canceled celebration, the 500 from Dad. Walter listened without interrupting, his weathered hands wrapped around his mug, jaw working like he was physically restraining himself from saying what he really thought. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You can stay here as long as you need," he finally said. "The spare room's yours. No rent, no conditions. Just promise me you'll finish college and make something of yourself. Best revenge is living well." I promised. That spare room became my launching pad. I worked full-time at the hardware store, went to classes, and spent every spare moment learning about real estate investment. Walter, it turned out, had dabbled in property renovation decades ago. He taught me everything he knew about finding undervalued properties, doing budget renovations, and maximizing rental income. The college fund he'd been secretly building for me turned out to be $8,000, enough to cover a year's tuition if I stayed local and kept working. I finished my degree in 3 years instead of 4 by taking summer classes and maxing out my credit hours each semester. Meanwhile, my family fell apart without me there to be the scapegoat. The dismissal letter from Haley's college arrived 2 weeks after I left. Mom called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that progressed from angry to desperate to guilt-tripping. "Blake, your sister needs you right now. This is a family crisis. How can you abandon us like this? We need to present a united front. Call me back immediately." I deleted every message without listening to them fully. Through Walter, who maintained sparse contact with Dad, I learned what was happening. The $40,000 tuition bill was due. Haley's mental health crisis defense didn't hold up when the registrar explained she'd failed every single class from sheer lack of attendance. Mom was furious. Dad was resigned. Haley was playing victim harder than ever, somehow making her academic failure about the family not supporting her emotional needs enough. Without me there as the buffer, the responsible one who made everyone else's dysfunction look less bad by comparison, they had to actually look at each other. Apparently, they didn't like what they saw. I graduated college at 24 with a degree in business administration and exactly 0 family members in attendance. Walter came, bringing a small cake and a card with a check for $1,000. Investment capital, he called it. Go make your first deal. That summer, I found a foreclosed property through a bank auction listing, 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood that had been sitting empty for 8 months. The grass was waist-high, the paint was peeling, and the interior looked like it had been abandoned mid-renovation by someone who'd run out of money and hope. Perfect. The bank was listing it at $52,000, but I could tell they were desperate. Properties in this condition scared off most buyers who wanted move-in ready homes. I spent a week researching comparable sales, calculating repair costs, and building a detailed renovation budget. Offered $47,000, expecting them to counter. They accepted $45,000 within 24 hours. Used Walter's $1,000 investment plus every penny I'd saved from 3 years of working at the hardware store as a down payment. Got a small business loan for the rest, with the property itself as collateral. The bank officer looked skeptical when I walked in with my renovation plans and budget spreadsheets, but the numbers were solid. He approved it. The next 6 months were brutal. I'd work my regular job during the day, then head to the property and work until midnight or later. Ripped out the disgusting carpet, found beautiful oak hardwood underneath that just needed refinishing, patched and painted every surface. Replaced outdated light fixtures with modern alternatives from the hardware store where I got my employee discount. Landscaped the yard myself, spending weekends pulling weeds and planting shrubs. Learned plumbing by watching YouTube videos and calling in favors from contractors I'd met through the hardware store. Figured out basic electrical work the same way. Made mistakes, plenty of them, but learned from each one. The first faucet I installed leaked for 3 days before I figured out I'd forgotten a washer. The first light switch I wired was backwards. But by the end, I could handle most basic home repairs competently. Also learned about permits, inspections, and the million small details that separate amateur landlords from professional property managers. Discovered that the city required specific permits for certain electrical work. Found out that rental properties needed specific safety features like hardwired smoke detectors. Every regulation felt like an obstacle designed to stop people like me, but I treated each one as a lesson in how to do things right. When I finished, the place looked completely transformed. Fresh paint, updated fixtures, refinished floors, landscaped yard, had it professionally appraised, and it came back at $89,000. I'd essentially created $44,000 in equity through 6 months of sweat and about $15,000 in materials and permits. Listed it for rent at $1,200 per month. Got 14 applications in the first week. Selected a young couple, both teachers, stable income, excellent references, no red flags. The rent covered my mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance fund with about $200 left over each month. That surplus went straight into savings for the next property. But more importantly, I'd proved I could do this. That first property wasn't just about money. It was about demonstrating that I could take something broken and make it valuable, that I could build something real with my own hands and intelligence. The second property came 8 months later. Another foreclosure, this one a duplex. Same process. Research, calculate, renovate, rent. This time the work went faster because I knew what I was doing. By the end of that renovation, I could tile a bathroom, install a toilet, wire a ceiling fan, and patch drywall better than half the contractors I'd met. Third property was a small single-family home that needed major work. The previous owner had started gutting the kitchen, then apparently just gave up. I spent 3 months finishing what they'd started, learning cabinet installation and countertop work along the way. Each property taught me something new. Each renovation made me more competent. Each successful rental proved I could do this professionally. By 26, I owned 3 rental properties. By 28, I had 7. By 30, I was running a small real estate investment company with 15 properties generating consistent monthly income. I'd built something real from nothing, using the same stubbornness my family used to hate about me. During those years, my family made sporadic attempts to contact me. Mom would call on holidays, leaving messages about healing family wounds and letting go of past hurt. Haley found me on social media, sending messages about how much she'd grown and how sorry she was. I ignored all of it. Not out of spite exactly, but because I genuinely had nothing to say to them. They belonged to a life I'd left behind. I'd moved so far past that version of myself that engaging with them felt like trying to have a conversation with strangers about someone else's problems. Then Walter got sick. Cancer. Stage 3 when they found it. He was 72 and stubborn as hell, insisting on minimal treatment so he could die on his own terms, instead of wasting away in some hospital. I moved back into his house to take care of him during those final months. That's when my family made their move. Mom showed up at Walter's house one afternoon while I was at work. She'd found out through some distant cousin that Walter was dying. Probably figured this was her chance to reconnect while I was vulnerable. Walter, bless him, Met her at the door and didn't let her inside. Patricia, he said coldly, you got some nerve showing up here after what you did to that boy. I'm his mother, she replied, trying to sound hurt. I have a right to see my son. You gave up that right when you chose your daughter's fantasy over your son's reality. Blake doesn't want to see you. Now get off my property before I call the police. She left, but not before leaving a letter. Walter gave it to me that evening. I almost threw it away unread, but something made me open it. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. 3 pages of how she'd always loved both children equally, how she'd been doing her best in difficult circumstances, how Haley had really changed and was now working hard to become independent. No actual apology, just explanations and justifications wrapped in victim language. The kicker was the last paragraph. We're having financial difficulties right now. Your father's overtime got cut, and Haley's been struggling to find stable employment. We could really use your help. I know you've been doing well in real estate. Maybe you could give us some advice or help with a loan? Family helps family, Blake. That's what we do. There it was. The real reason for the sudden interest in reconciliation. They needed money. I showed the letter to Walter. He read it, then handed it back with a disgusted shake of his head. They haven't changed at all, he said. Still using people. Still refusing to take responsibility. Still expecting you to fix their problems. I know. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. Absolutely nothing. Walter smiled. That's my boy. He passed away 3 weeks later, peacefully in his sleep. Left me everything. The house, his savings, his old truck. The will included a note. Blake, you were the grandson I was proud to claim and the son my boy never learned to be. Use this foundation to build something beautiful. Don't let them pull you back down. The funeral was small. Me, a few of Walter's old friends, Dad. Mom and Haley didn't come. They weren't invited. Dad looked terrible. Older than ever, hollow-eyed. He approached me after the service. I'm sorry, he said. About everything. About being too weak to stand up to your mother. About letting Haley manipulate all of us. About not being the father you deserved. I studied him for a long moment. The anger I'd expected to feel wasn't there. Just a sort of detached pity for this man who'd wasted years of his life enabling dysfunction. You can't fix the past, Dennis, I told him. But you can stop repeating it in the future. I'm getting divorced, he said suddenly. Filed papers last week. I should have done it years ago, but I kept thinking things would get better. They never did. Good, I said. Maybe now you can figure out who you actually are instead of who Patricia wanted you to be. We didn't hug or have some tearful reconciliation, just nodded at each other like business acquaintances and went our separate ways. But something had shifted. Dad was finally making a choice instead of just accepting whatever happened to him. Inheriting Walter's house gave me the capital I needed to expand the business. I sold the property for $180,000 and used the proceeds to buy a small apartment complex. 8 units that needed significant work but had solid bones. Spent a year renovating, then filled them with quality tenants at market rates. The business grew. By 32, I was managing 43 properties across 3 counties. By 35, I'd expanded into commercial real estate, small office buildings, retail strips, even a small warehouse complex. Each acquisition was carefully researched, conservatively financed, and managed with the same attention to detail I'd learned from that first foreclosure. The key was treating tenants like people instead of revenue sources. I responded to maintenance requests within 24 hours, kept properties in excellent condition, charged fair market rates instead of squeezing every possible dollar, built a reputation as a landlord people actually wanted to rent from. Word spread. My vacancy rates were consistently below 5% when the market average was 12 to 15%. I also started mentoring other young investors, people who reminded me of myself at 24, hungry, determined, but without the knowledge or connections to get started. I'd meet them for coffee, review their business plans, sometimes even partner with them on their first deals. Watching someone succeed using the principles Walter taught me felt like honoring his legacy in the most meaningful way possible. The investment company itself became profitable beyond just rental income. I'd find distressed properties, renovate them efficiently, then either hold them for rental income or sell them to other investors at market rates. The company developed a reputation for taking on challenging projects that others avoided. Weird layouts, code violations, difficult locations. I'd figured out that problems others saw as deal breakers were actually opportunities if you knew how to solve them systematically. Revenue hit 7 figures annually when I was 33. Not bad for someone who'd left home at 23 with $500 and a duffel bag. Somewhere along the way, I'd become legitimately wealthy. Not private jet rich, but comfortable in a way my parents never were despite their constant striving to appear successful. The difference was I'd built something real, while they'd been maintaining appearances on credit cards and overtime. I also met Natalie. She was a real estate attorney handling the closing on one of my commercial properties, a small office building I was converting to mixed-use retail space. The previous owner had gotten tangled up in code violations and was selling at a loss just to escape the headache. I saw potential where they saw problems. Natalie walked into our first meeting wearing a sharp suit and carrying a briefcase that looked like it weighed more than she did. She was direct, efficient, with exactly zero patience for nonsense. Within 5 minutes, she'd identified 3 potential issues with the title that the previous attorney had missed. Within 10 minutes, she'd outlined solutions for all 3. "You actually read the whole contract," I said, impressed. "Most attorneys just skimmed the standard stuff." "That's literally my job," she replied, without looking up from her notes. "You'd be surprised how many people pay me to do things they could do themselves if they just read the documents." We ended up grabbing coffee after the closing. She suggested it, said she liked working with investors who actually understood what they were buying instead of just chasing money. We talked for 2 hours about real estate, market trends, and property law. She'd grown up in a trailer park, put herself through law school working 3 jobs, and had exactly zero patience for people who made excuses instead of making progress. "My mom always said I should find a nice, stable man to take care of me," Natalie mentioned during one of our early dates. She meant it as advice. I took it as a warning about what not to do. We clicked immediately. 2 people who'd both built themselves from nothing and understood that success wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about building something real that couldn't be taken away. She also understood family dysfunction in ways most people couldn't. Her father had been an addict who drained the family savings multiple times before disappearing when she was 12. Her mother had spent years making excuses for him, choosing loyalty to a destructive man over protection of her kids. Natalie had learned early, same as me, that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you are actually the ones holding you back. "You know what I love about real estate?" she said one evening while reviewing contracts at my kitchen table. "Buildings don't lie. They don't manipulate. They don't make excuses. Either the foundation is solid or it isn't. Either the structure is sound or it isn't. Everything is measurable, fixable, improvable. Wish people worked the same way." We dated for a year before I proposed. Nothing fancy, just the 2 of us at the first property I'd ever renovated, standing in the living room where I'd spent 6 months learning how to build something from broken pieces. I told her that was exactly what she'd helped me do with my life. Take someone broken and help them become whole without trying to change who they fundamentally were. She said yes before I finished the question. We got married 2 years later at a small venue that held exactly 50 people. Small ceremony, close friends only. No family drama, no performance, no pretense. Just 2 people who understood each other committing to building something together. Dad came, which surprised me. He'd fully divorced Patricia by then and was dating someone named Claire who actually treated him like an equal. He looked healthier than I'd seen him in years, like decades of weight had been lifted off his shoulders. "I'm proud of you," he told me at the reception. "Walter would be too. Thanks. I know I don't deserve forgiveness," he continued, "but I want you to know I'm trying to be better. To do better." "I can see that," I said, and I meant it. Around this time, I got an unexpected message on social media from Haley. Unlike the previous attempts at contact, this one was different. No excuses, no manipulation, just a straightforward message. "Blake, I know I don't deserve a response, but I wanted you to know I've been working on myself. Got a job at a restaurant? Been there 2 years now. Started as a hostess, worked up to shift manager. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work, and I'm proud of it. I'm sorry for everything. You don't have to forgive me or even respond. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what you've known all along. That real worth comes from what you build, not what you're given." I didn't respond immediately. Showed it to Natalie, who read it carefully. "What do you think?" she asked. "I think people can change," I said. "But I also think time will tell if it's real or just another performance." Fair. 6 months later, Haley messaged again, this time with photos of her working at the restaurant. A simple apartment she'd rented on her own. A small savings account she'd built up. No requests, no manipulation. Just evidence of a life she was building without anyone's help. I responded with a single line, "Proud of you for doing the work." Her reply came hours later. "Thank you, that means more than you know." We didn't become close, didn't have tearful reunions or pretend the past didn't matter, but we established a distant respect. 2 people who shared DNA and trauma, acknowledging each other's existence without demanding anything. As for Mom, I heard through the family grapevine that she was living in a small apartment after the divorce, working as a receptionist, still telling anyone who'd listen about her ungrateful children who'd abandoned her. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that she'd ended up doing the same type of work Haley had started with, except Haley had used it as a foundation to grow, while Patricia used it as proof of victimhood. Last year, I decided to honor Walter's memory by opening a community center in the neighborhood where he'd lived his entire adult life. The building was a former warehouse that had been sitting empty for 3 years. Owner had died, heirs couldn't agree on what to do with it, eventually sold it just to stop paying taxes on vacant property. I bought it for $180,000, then spent another $400,000 on renovations. The space was massive, 12,000 square feet of potential. We gutted it completely, bringing it up to modern building codes while preserving the original exposed brick and timber beams that gave it character. Created a computer lab with 20 workstations running current software. Built 4 private tutoring rooms where kids could get one-on-one help with homework. Designed a large multi-purpose room that could host everything from job training workshops to community meetings. Added a commercial kitchen and small restaurant space where people could get affordable meals. Nothing fancy, just good food at prices that wouldn't break someone's budget. The restaurant was Natalie's idea. She'd pointed out that lots of families in that neighborhood were food insecure, but free meals came with stigma. Charging $1 for a plate of food let people maintain dignity while still getting help. Smart woman, my wife. Spent 8 months on the renovation, managing contractors and doing much of the work myself when I could. The building transformed from an abandoned eyesore into something the neighborhood could be proud of. Named it the Walter Foundation, after the man who taught me that success meant building ladders for others to climb, not pulling them up behind you. At the grand opening ceremony, over 200 people showed up. Local families, business owners, city council members who'd helped fast-track our permits. The computer lab was already booked solid for the next month. 3 local teachers had volunteered to run free tutoring sessions. The restaurant had applications from 5 people wanting to work there, all from the neighborhood. Dad came with Claire, Haley came with her boyfriend and their baby son Owen. She'd named him after Walter's middle name. Natalie's family filled the room. Friends from over the years, business associates, people from the neighborhood who'd watched the renovation happen. I stood at the front of the room, looking out at faces that actually cared, and realized something profound. I'd built this. Not just the building, not just the business, not just the wealth. I'd built a life surrounded by people who chose to be there, who showed up, who gave without expecting anything back. During my speech, I talked about Walter and what he'd taught me about resilience, self-respect, and the difference between family you're born into and family you choose. Walter once told me that the best revenge isn't proving people wrong, I said. It's proving yourself right. He showed me that when people try to make you small, you don't shrink to fit their expectations. You grow until you outgrow them completely. The room was silent, people actually listening. Some people will try to dim your light because it makes their darkness visible. They'll try to convince you that you're nothing because your something threatens their everything. But when you choose yourself, when you refuse to shrink for someone else's comfort, you don't just save yourself. You show others that they can choose themselves too. I looked at Dad, who had tears in his eyes. At Haley, who was holding Owen and nodding. At Natalie, who understood better than anyone what it took to build something real from broken pieces. Walter chose to reach out to an invisible kid. Dennis chose divorce over continuing the lie. Haley chose work over manipulation. And I chose to leave a house that was never a home to build something real. That's what this foundation represents. The idea that it's never too late to choose differently. The applause filled the room, but I wasn't quite finished. I want to end with this, I said. The real gift Patricia gave me, without meaning to, was showing me exactly what not to be. By denying me birthday celebrations, she taught me to celebrate myself every day. By telling me I was nothing, she motivated me to become something. By erasing me from family photos, she freed me to paint my own portrait. Dad stood up, something he never would have done years ago. That's my son, he said loud enough for everyone to hear. That's my boy in every way that matters. The party continued late into the night. Haley left early to put Owen to bed, but not before hugging me. A real hug without agenda or manipulation. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me it was possible to change. You did that yourself, I told her. I just stopped enabling the alternative. Dad stayed until the end, helping clean up like a volunteer rather than expecting to be served. As we stacked chairs together, he said something that stayed with me. I wasted 20 years being afraid of your mother's anger, afraid of making waves, afraid of standing up for what was right. The funny part is, once I finally did it, I realized the only thing I should have been afraid of was wasting more time being afraid. Better late than never, I said. Still, he replied, looking at the empty room that would soon be filled with kids learning and growing. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough when it counted, when you needed me to be. We can't change the past, I told him. But you're here now. That counts for something. As Natalie and I locked up that night, she took my hand and said something I'll never forget. You know what the best revenge really is? It's not success or money or even happiness. It's indifference. Patricia is out there somewhere, still angry, still bitter, still blaming everyone else. But you've moved so far past her that she's not even a footnote in your story anymore. She's just a catalyst that started a reaction she couldn't control. She was right. I rarely thought about Patricia anymore. When I did, it was with the kind of detached curiosity you might have about a stranger's problems. Her hold over me had dissolved completely, replaced by the solid foundation of real relationships and earned success. Looking back now, getting banned from my own birthday was the greatest gift my toxic family ever gave me. It forced me to stop waiting for them to celebrate my existence and start celebrating it myself. It taught me that you can't earn love from people who see your success as their failure. And most importantly, it showed me that sometimes the best way to honor where you came from is to become everything they tried to prevent you from being. I'm 37 now. Natalie and I have 2 kids who are growing up in a house where birthdays are celebrated, achievements are recognized, and love isn't conditional on being better than someone else. Haley brings Owen over for Sunday dinners, where he plays with his cousins and learns that family gatherings can be about joy rather than judgment. Dad is an active grandfather, the kind he never got to be before. He still apologizes sometimes for the lost years, but I tell him the same thing every time. We can't change the past, but we can choose the future. As for Patricia, I heard through distant relatives that she's still at that receptionist job, still telling anyone who'll listen about her ungrateful children who abandoned her. The difference between her and Haley is stark. Haley chose growth while Patricia chose victimhood. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.